southbound traffic will be reduced to a single.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Montgomery County Council meeting on Tuesday, September 15th, 2020. We're going to begin this morning with two presentations. The first one, Councilmember Rice and myself will be presenting a proclamation celebrating Constitution Week, and then the second one, County Executive Elrich and myself will be recognizing World Suicide Prevention Day, and with that, and Councilmember Albernaz will be joining us on that as well. And with that, we're going to start with Councilmember Rice. Councilmember, would you please like to tell us about the Constitution?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President, and good morning, everyone. Today is September 15th. However, we're going to pretend for a moment that it's September 17th, the anniversary of our United States Constitution. And I want to start off at the very beginning because when we think about why this Constitution was founded, I can't think of a better quote than what came from Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. She said, "What makes the Constitution worthy of our commitment? First and foremost, the answer is freedom. It quite simply is the most powerful vision of freedom ever expressed. It's also the world's shortest and oldest national constitution, neither so rigid as to be stifling, nor so malleable as to be devoid of meaning. Our Constitution has been an inspiration that has changed the trajectory of world history for the perpetual benefit of mankind. Back in 1787, no country in the world ever had allowed its citizens their own form of government. That's really important to know. And much less to select a democratic government at that. And what was revolutionary when it was written, and what continues to inspire the world today, is that the Constitution put governance in the hands of its people. That is so important as we approach another presidential election, making sure that everyone understands their responsibility and right to vote, and that we are putting governance in the hands of the people, not one person, but all of us. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Katz.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. We're also very pleased to have Karma Beal with us this morning, and I'm going to give a few fun facts and then ask her to add some statements as well. But there's some fun facts always associated with the Constitution, and every year we are reminded of a few of them. The first time the formal term, the United States of America, was used was in the Declaration of Independence. And on March 24th, 1788, now for those who are into trivia, my birthday is on March 24th, but it was a few years after 1788. But on March 24th, 1788, a popular election was held in Rhode Island to determine the ratification status of the new Constitution. The vote was 237 in favor and 2,945 opposed. So this country has gone through a little bit of this for a few years. There was a proposal at the Constitution Convention to limit the standing army for the country to 5,000 men. George Washington sarcastically agreed with the proposal as long as a stipulation was added that no invading army could number more than 3,000 troops. Benjamin Franklin of Pennsylvania was known as the sage of the Constitutional Convention. He was also the mediator at the convention and often counseled that we are here to consult, not to contend. Something we all should keep in mind, I guess, especially now. I think it should be noted that the other language used in various parts of the Constitution is Latin. And the last one that I'm going to bring up is that 4 of the signers of the Constitution were born in Ireland. So not all were born on American soil. Ms. Beal, would you like to add a few statements as well, please?
I can do that. I don't know how many people know that the original Constitution and Bill of Rights had no provision for voting. That was left up to the states. And as such, it was left to white, wealthy men, educated men. And women and people of color, lesser education, were not allowed to vote. It wasn't until the 15th Amendment and the 19th Amendment that African Americans and women were allowed to vote. And then the African Americans were partially disenfranchised by states by the laws they set up requiring certain things like paying a poll tax, proving your education, proving your worth, your character. And that went on until 1964 when the Civil Rights Act was passed, and then in 1965 when the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was passed. And so now almost all Americans who are 18 years of age and older can vote. Even people in the District of Columbia, Native Americans, people in the territories are allowed to vote. And that has shown that the Constitution was drawn up with thought as to how it could be amended for future generations.
Thank you very much. And with that, Craig, if you we are going to read a proclamation. Why don't you start off and read the first two, and I'll read the last two. How does that sound?
Actually, Cindy, why don't you start, and I'll do the next one.
Okay. All right. Whereas the Constitution of the United States embodies the ideas and principles of our founding fathers, supplemented by the wisdom that has been reflected in our dynamic republic over 2 centuries, and whereas September 15, 2020 marks the 233rd anniversary of the framing of our Constitution by the 1787 Constitutional Convention, and, please, Craig. You're on mute. You're on mute.
I'm sorry, I'm having a technical difficulty here. If you can go ahead.
Okay.
We can hear you now.
Yeah. Whereas the Constitution not only embodies the hopes and aspirations of Americans for liberty and representative government, but also continues to inspire people seeking freedom the world over, and still technical difficulties. Okay. Whereas Constitution Week, celebrated September 17th to September 23rd each year, commemorates the formation and signing of the United States Constitution on September 17, 1787. Now therefore it be resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland hereby recognizes the 233rd anniversary of the United States Constitution and urges constant vigilance of county residents in protecting their liberties and rights for generations of Americans still to come. It's presented today and signed by Councilmember Craig Rice and Sidney Katz, the Council President. Thank you very much for being here for that proclamation. And we are now going to go to the proclamation with the County Executive and Councilmember Albernaz about World Suicide Prevention Day. And with that, we're going to ask the County Executive if he would like to say a few words.
Yes, let's see. Am I?
Yep, we can hear you.
You can hear me.
We can't see you, but we can hear you. There you go.
There, I'm visible again.
There you go.
Yeah. So, again, good morning, everybody. This is Suicide Prevention Month, and I know that suicide is one of the most difficult things for anybody to deal with, for the families and loved ones of the person who commits suicide, and for the torment that people go through that brings them to that point. We know this is a tragedy. These are lives that are lost that don't need to be lost. And it deeply affects people in our community. And we also know that in the time of COVID, that the stresses that have been put on people are greater than ever. That whatever made life difficult and troubling before has only been exacerbated by the conditions that people are all living in now, and we're aware of that. And in that sense, it makes this year celebrating this month, or acknowledging this month, and also acknowledging the work people do, becomes even more important, because we are the eyes in the community on our friends and on our neighbors, and we're likely to be the first ones to see signs of a person's distress. And so it's important to have that awareness. And I want to do a proclamation, and I think we'll take turns, Gabe. We'll do this. We'll switch the whereases off, right?
Yes, the three of us will.
The three of us will. Okay.
Yeah. But,
Okay. Yes.
But we're going to ask Gabe to say a few words now, too. Please, Councilmember Albernaz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. The county executive did a great job giving a highlight of why this is such an important day. But, as we're trying to protect our mental health and trying to cope with the overwhelming uncertainty that we're all feeling right now, it's more important than ever that we're here for each other and that we take the steps to raise awareness, work to destigmatize suicide and mental illness, because we know it's important to ask tough questions. If one of our friends or loved ones is in emotional distress or pain, I want to take a moment to acknowledge Dr. Raymond Crowell, who prior to serving as the director of the Department of Health and Human Services, led very ably our work around suicide prevention and behavioral health as a division chief within the Department of Health and Human Services. And he represents the kind of professional that is on the front lines, helping to support families across our community. And I also want to acknowledge the incredible community-based organizations and nonprofit organizations and staff of Health and Human Services who work so tirelessly on behalf of our communities every day. It is more important now than ever that we come together as a community to address the issues that lead to suicide and support our community during this very stressful time.
Thank you. And I'm not going to be very long on this either. I'm going to ask Dr. Crowell if he had a few words to say afterwards as well. But, this, in many ways, suicide has been said time and time again, is a horrible situation for everyone involved in it. The person who ultimately decides to do that become a suicidal person obviously affects their families. They affect every loved one they've ever met, their neighbors. We all need to band together to do our very best to help prevent this. And we're doing, in some ways, a better job. We have more mental health workers. In Montgomery County, we're certainly looking to do an even better job beyond that than what we're doing now. But many times someone figures that this is the way that they're going to solve their problems, and they're not. This is not the way. They don't want to lose their life. They want to lose their problems. And if you let all of us come together to figure out how to help, and we do, everybody has problems. If you let us come together and let us help, it can mean so much more. To think that no one ever wants to smile again is a very tough thing for all of us to think about. So I applaud everyone who is working in this field. I applaud everyone that steps up. I applaud everyone who thinks that when they know of a person who is being troubled and has troubles, that you let all of us know so that we too can help. And with that, Dr. Crowell, did you have a few words to add as well, please?
Sure. Thank you, and I'll be brief in the interest of time. And thank you for taking the time to do this proclamation. In a couple of numbers around this. In 2018, there were 48,000 people who took their lives, who committed suicide. And in this world of COVID-19, where we're fast approaching 200,000 people whose lives have been lost due to this, it doesn't seem like a big number, but that is an incredibly large number. It's the equivalent of a jumbo jet crashing every week in this country, fully loaded, just to give it a real physical context. But it's not just last year, 2018. That happens every year in this country and has been happening every year for decades. And those numbers have gone up recently. That 48,000 is a higher number. It's a time for us to remember, and I'm grateful for you all taking this time to remember that even in the face of all the things we're doing with COVID, people are still suffering, people are still in pain, and they still need our help to get through that. And this message, our message, should constantly be one that there is help, that it can be, that there is a path to a better way, that suicide is not an answer to a problem. So, and I want to encourage folks who may be listening or may have a chance to hear this to be the one to ask the person who's in trouble to keep them safe in a time of trouble, to be there for them in any kind of way that you can, to help them connect, and to make sure that you follow up with them, to make sure that they're not alone out here, and that there is support and there are people who care about them. So thank you all again for this moment.
Thank you for all that you do and your department. We sincerely appreciate it. With that, County Executive, would you like to start off by reading the proclamation?
Yes, I would. Thank you. Whereas suicide is a leading cause of death among all age groups and is the second leading cause of death among individuals ages 10 to 34. In 2018, 48,344 people in the United States and 650 in Maryland died by suicide as reported by the Centers for Disease Control. And
Councilmember Albornoz.
Whereas mental health plays a crucial role in overall health and well-being, the prevalence of behavioral health disorders in Montgomery County is significant across all communities, including mental illness and addiction. And whereas
increased isolation and anxiety resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic have exacerbated behavioral health problems, increasing risk of suicide and overdose. And whereas
increasing deaths from suicide and drug overdoses are damaging to individuals, families, and the community. A single suicide loss affects, on average, 115 people. And
whereas a knowledgeable, informed, supportive, and welcoming community can save lives by combating stigma and taking action to promote the mental health of everyone using interventions that are evidence-based, collaborative, with consumers and families, and focused on strength, resilience, and hope, including promoting wellness, preventing mental illness and addiction, actively treating mental illness and addiction, and supporting the recovery of persons affected across their lifespan, will decrease risk of suicide and overdose, resulting in thriving youth and families. And whereas
organizations such as the Maryland Suicide Prevention and Early Intervention Network, MD-SPIN, and the Governor's Commission on Suicide Prevention resolve to integrate and coordinate suicide prevention activities across multiple sectors and settings, develop, implement, and monitor effective programs that promote wellness and prevent suicides as an aspirational, and prevent suicides and related behaviors, promote suicide prevention as a core component of healthcare services, promote the adoption of zero suicides as an aspirational goal by healthcare and community support systems that provide services and support to define patent populations, increase the timelessness and usefulness of surveillance systems relevant to suicide prevention, and improve the ability to collect, analyze, and use this information for action. Now, therefore, do we, Mark Elrich as County Executive and Sidney Katz as County Council President, hereby proclaim, along with Councilmember Albornoz, hereby proclaim September 2020 as Suicide Prevention Month, and we call upon residents, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses and schools in Montgomery County to commit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of mental health, the importance of protecting their mental health, and the need for appropriate and accessible behavioral health services for all residents. And it's signed today by both County Executive Elrich and myself. Thank you all very, very much for all that you do, and we appreciate you being here. All right. And with that, we're going to get into our general business at this point. Madam Clerk, do we have any announcements, changes to the agenda, or petitions?
Yes, good morning. Under general business, under announcements, there are changes to the agenda. There is an addendum. Number 8, postponed public hearing, expedited bill 3420, police disciplinary procedures, police labor relations, duty to bargain amendments. Public Safety Committee work session tentatively scheduled for October 1, 2020. The public hearing is postponed until September 22nd, 2020 at 1:30 p.m. Also, a change to the agenda is legislative session day number 27, number 17, introduction of bills, expedited bill 40-20, uniform traders license fee, lead sponsors, council members Glass and Friedson, added co-sponsors, council members Navarro, Rice, Albanos, and Katz. Public hearing is scheduled for September 22nd, 2020 at 1:30 p.m. Also, there is a petition. The council has received a petition from the residents of Montgomery County opposing ZTA 20-01 solar collection system AR zone standards. That is all, Council President.
Thank you very much. The next item that we have is an update on the Purple Line, and hopefully people from the Purple Line are here. Councilmember Vice President Hucker, did you want to lead off as for transportation and environment on this topic, please?
Sure. Yeah. I see Administrator Quinn here and Director Conklin.
Mr. Hucker?
Yeah.
This is Glenn Orland. Secretary Slater's aide about 15 minutes ago wrote in saying that due to certain unforeseen circumstances, Mr. Slater cannot be at the briefing this morning. So Mr. Quinn and Mr. Pollack will be conducting the briefing.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Mr. President, and thanks to all of you for joining us this morning. You all know this council and the county executive have been unanimously committed to the Purple Line for quite a long time. The project is really critical to our state's economy and to the quality of life of our residents. It's central to meeting our economic development goals, to connecting our thriving urban downtowns. It's critical to meeting our climate commitments and our racial equity goals and many other policy priorities. And that's why it's enjoyed the unanimous support of this council for so long. And before before the state made the commitment to it, it was the number one priority on our priorities letter. So I know all of us here today are very frustrated by the court action and the place the state finds itself in after so much energy and effort has gone into providing this project. And we're really eager, Administrator Quinn, to hearing you talk about the path forward. I'm grateful to you for the conversation we had on Sunday, for you making yourself available. It helped me understand. I'm sure I'll probably repeat a lot of those questions today for the benefit of my colleagues and the public. Personally, I started advocating for the Purple Line with Harry Sanders and Ben Ross and others over 20 years ago under Governor Glendening. So it feels like a real blow to be where we are, but I don't want to dwell on that. I realize many of the actions that got us to this place are outside your control. The lawsuits, the actions of Judge Leon, the position of CSX, but many things are also hard to understand, especially how when as Judge Geller made clear, if the contract was so clear that any delays of over a year give either party grounds to leave the contract, why those at least two areas of dispute were allowed to fester for so long under Secretary Ron. So I'm eager to not dwell on the past, but hear about your aspirations for the path forward and your reflections on how we got here and how we're going to avoid any of those problems in the future. So let me just turn it over to you, and then we'll get to questions, I guess.
Well, let me ask before we do that. First off, Mr. Quinn and Mr. Pollack and Mr. Conklin, thank you for being here as well. But I know that you all always are under a time frame, a time constraint. So up front, how long can you be with us today?
We have until around 10 a.m.
10 a.m. Okay. Then we will be we will honor that commitment. And with that, council member, well, we're going to hear from you, and then we're going to hear from the council members afterwards. So please, thank you for being here.
Okay. Well, great. Well, Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for having us. So I am Kevin Quinn. I'm the M.MTA administrator. I'm joined today by Matt Pollock, our project director for the Purple Line. And Secretary Slater is unfortunately able to join. Something came up at the last minute, just totally out of his control, and he does send his sincere apologies. He did want to be here and had this very much on his schedule, and, things come up. So for today's meeting, I do want to address two main items. One is kind of the status of the current litigation, and two is kind of where we sit from a project delivery standpoint. So in terms of the litigation piece, the whole strategy of it, Secretary Slater always does a good job giving kind of disclaimers, and I'll kind of follow his lead that there's not a ton I can really get into, and so just understand that those legal questions on the advice of counsel I'm not able so much to elaborate on. However, I can say that, last Thursday, the Circuit Court of Baltimore City issued a ruling that effectively denied the state's request to have the court order the concessionaire to keep working until it completes the dispute resolution process. There's a lot longer way to go on the litigation side, and our focus right now is to really let the attorneys, let the lawyers kind of handle that. My background is in transit planning, and I'm not going to pretend to be an attorney. I'm a transit guy. And my priority and Matt's priority right now is focused on delivering this project for the residents of Montgomery and Prince George's counties. And so, simply put, while we disagree with the concessionaire's assertions, we're not going to let their claims and things distract us from getting this job done. So know that is our focus and that is our commitment. On the project delivery side, as we work to continue construction, we're going to be coordinating with the concessionaire to make a transition of work really as smooth as possible. We're also going to make it our top priority to maintain a safe and efficient construction that really moves this project forward. I've spoken with many of you, and I understand your concerns and your residents' concerns about delays to this project. Right now, we have teams on the project delivery side that are meeting daily with their sleeves rolled up, working out solutions along every segment of the alignment, with a focus really on building up the state's ability to manage as much of that work as possible. That work includes some key tasks that Matt is going to be discussing further, such as our teams working with PLTP and PLTC on an orderly transition. That transition is not complete, at this time, and PLTC, who is the design build contractor for this project, is still doing some construction work on the Purple Line. We also want to focus on scoping the work moving forward, and building also both the construction side and the kind of client side teams that are going to keep this project moving forward. For me, I very much like to think of this project kind of in three phases. The first phase is kind of the legal phase, the attorneys piece. They're going to be working on that. I'm not going to go into all that. The second piece, probably most critical, is really the short-term management of construction and keeping construction going as much as possible. The third piece is really the long-term and the long-term process. And I'll say that is, I think, still very much in the evaluation phase, as we're kind of just out of litigation and very much evaluating our options. There's a number of long-term paths that this project could take, and each kind of has a number of kind of permutations within itself. And so I think it's too early at this point to speculate exactly what that long-term option is going to be, but we're still evaluating that. I can say that there are a number of good contractors in the market that want to take on this work. Some really good Maryland companies that want to take on this work that have reached out to us. But in the short term, again, we're focused on just that, keeping construction moving forward on this project into the winter and really coming out with a solid long-term process underway. I want to be honest, though. I'm not going to sit here and say that there won't be stumbling blocks along the way, or make commitments that the state is going to be able to maintain that same level of activity happening that PLTC had going on in the next few weeks and the months. But I can tell you that in the long term, we're going to deliver this project for the state of Maryland, and we're going to deliver it efficiently. I want to address a couple of other items just quickly before I turn it over to Matt. Regarding settlement, the state does remain open to a fair and reasonable settlement. However, I want to note that any fair and reasonable settlement, any settlement has to be fair and reasonable, but it's also got to show that we're going to have a good partner for the next 30 years. This is a long-term commitment. This is a marriage, and we want to be sure we do have a good partner there. I know, secondly, just related to community impacts as a result of construction, there's a lot of residents focused on this. And so there's some key things that we're focused on. So one is safety. Safety is priority number one for us, and I want to convey our commitment to safety and ensuring that these sites are either buttoned up as much as possible or that they're modified as much as possible to keep them safe, that they don't impede pedestrian access, that they don't cause broader traffic issues. And so if those items are popping up, I'd encourage you to let me, let Matt, or let someone on the project team know. Second is that we're going to do our absolute best to keep construction moving. As we evaluate subcontracts over the next few weeks, we're going to do our best to maintain the work that we recognize is most impactful to communities and to residents. Again, a lot of elected officials have reached out kind of with their priorities or the issues that they're getting some pressure on from their residents. And so we're going to work to continue to listen and work with our partners. Once we've kind of done that full evaluation, really looking at the next 30 days of where that work can continue or where work may potentially be delayed, I want to commit to you a real commitment to communication and to communicate that work in briefings like these with elected officials, to our CATs throughout the entire alignment. I think communication is just absolutely going to be key throughout this process so that folks understand what's happening in their neighborhood. I want to turn it over now to Matt Pollock, who's going to talk a bit about some of the activities of the project delivery team as they're really formulating the path forward, and discuss the team that we have working hard to deliver a high-quality project. Matt?
Thank you, Administrator. Good morning, everybody. My name is Matthew Pollock. I am the Executive Director for Transit Development and Delivery. I've been on this team since June. I was brought on board by the Secretary and the Administrator to oversee the entire team and to deliver this project. And so that is what I am here to do. Kevin discussed two major areas that we're concentrating on at the delivery team level. Right now, we're concentrating on transition and continuing the project. With respect to transitioning the project, the state and PLTP, along with the design builder, that's PLTC, we're holding daily meetings to facilitate the transition of the project over to the state. Topics of those transition meetings include demobilization activities, protection of the work, and safe conditions of the sites, project status and the administrative documentation, and certainly subcontractor coordination and assignment. Outside of these transition meetings, the state's project delivery team is collecting information, establishing processes, staffing up, and we're taking actions to keep the Purple Line project moving forward. Those activities fall into three major categories. First is identifying the work that can continue under state management. At this time, we're looking at lots of different options, but the areas right now where we believe we are going to be continuing work includes design completion, the utility relocations, the wall work. There's lots of walls that are out there along the alignment that you see where you see a lot of posts or just the dirt being pushed back. We're going to complete those walls. And then we have a large amount of off-site equipment that is under manufacturing and test, and we have to keep all that work going as well. The second item that we're working on is coordinating with the existing subcontractors that are available to continue their work under state management. And at the same time, we need to establish backup plans for any subcontractors that won't be continuing. So this includes design firms, utility relocation firms, construction firms, the firms that are doing safety and quality assurance, and all of our equipment manufacturers as well. And then the third item, the third activity we're concentrating on is really putting in place the administrative staff, the processes, and the material necessary to pivot from managing where we were managing a single P3 contract. Now we're in a situation where we may be managing, in excess of 100 contracts as we move this project forward. Pardon me. We're going to know more in the next 30 days regarding the path forward. There's been a lot going on, and our efforts up until last week have been focused quite broadly on the many different paths that this project could have headed down. With the litigation just finished last week, we have some clarity on our options to move the path forward, but there still are paths that we have to evaluate. With all the different paths, I am confident that the state has the right team in place that will help us get there. And I hope for your patience. We will communicate, and we will take this project forward. Thank you, Administrator.
Thank you. Mr. Quinn, did you have anything else to add? We're going to go to Mr. Conklin next.
I'm good. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, very good. Mr. Conklin, did you have anything to add, please?
Sure. Just a couple things. Communication with the Purple Line team at MTA has been greatly improved since Mr. Pollock's arrival, and we very much appreciate the open lines of communication that have been established between our staff and the MTA folks that are trying to keep this on track. We don't envy the position that the state is in by any stretch. It's a very significant challenge for them to figure out how to keep this project moving in the environment they're in, and we thank them for their work to do that. Obviously, we are going to remain vigilant and watch the progress of this and make sure that things stay on track and communicate with the executive and council if we see any indication that that's not happening. And we are in ongoing conversations with Mr. Pollock and his team about the county financial stake in the project, both the direct contribution to the Purple Line and the county-funded projects that are being constructed as part of the overall project, the Bethesda South Entrance, Capitol Crescent Trail, Green Trail. And you saw in our CIP savings plan, we are delaying some of those payments to make sure that the county's investment in this is occurring at the time that the work is being completed and that we're not ahead of that process. So we've been asked a lot of times what we're doing, and what we're doing is giving the state the space they need to figure out the best path forward and manage all these complex relationships with the contractors, the designers, and the challenge of picking up partially completed work that somebody's going to have to do. So, like I mentioned, it's a very difficult task, and we're trying to be as supportive as we can and not create additional challenges for our partners at the state.
Thank you. And with that, I'm going to turn to my colleagues. Because of the time constraint, we're going to stick to the 5-minute rule, and the first person is Vice President Hucker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks, gentlemen, for all your comments. It's very helpful. And I've been continually happy to hear your comments and Secretary Slater's comments about your ongoing commitment to this project, because there is a lot of public concern about that. Will the governor also be saying publicly that he's committed to finish this project and minimize future delay?
I'm not able to speak on behalf of the governor.
Sure, I think that would be helpful too. And Mr. Pollock, you said really it'll be only 30 days before you know the path forward, both whether you continue to pursue legal action and whether, if you don't, you move forward with another P3 or a traditional design build?
No, I didn't mean to infer that. I meant we're going to know more in 30 days.
We'll know more.
We're going to know more. Certainly, the legal action is coming down a separate path. I think 30 days is when we're going to have a better feel for what work we're going to be continuing in the near term. I think our long-term path is going to take a while.
I think Mr. Quinn had said 4 to 6 months for the question.
Yes.
Is more accurate? Okay.
Yes, thanks for clarifying that.
Sure. It's for my benefit. Kevin, you had talked a little bit about the on one major consideration, whether you go forward with a P3 or a design build, more of a traditional route, involved the differences in the licensing, bonding, insurance requirements for state contractors versus contractors under where the PLTP is bearing the risk. Do you want to mention that?
Yes, I guess I'll just note, and Matt, feel free to chime in here, that the part of our evaluation of the subcontracts. I don't want to go into the details of it, but essentially, we need to take a look at the clauses that are in there. So, this is FTA funded. It's critical that it has all the appropriate FTA flow down clauses. It's critical that these contracts are structured in such a way that continue to protect the state versus between sort of two private entities. And so, we've got to really analyze every aspect of these subcontracts. Matt, your team is diving into
Yeah.
that. Anything
We've looked at pretty much all of the subcontracts. Most of them are fairly standard. There are a few that are unique, such as the car builder or the operations entities. But in general, we're fairly comfortable with the way that they are put together.
Great. Okay. There's been speculation about, subsequent to the court decision now, that you could return back to the table with PLTP. Is that still feasible, and why or why not?
Yeah, again, I'll just to some of the items I noted in my opening. We absolutely remain open to a fair and reasonable settlement. Those discussions are continuing, and so we absolutely remain committed to a settlement if that's a possibility.
And I appreciate, Matt, everything you've said about communication being key, and that Mr. Conklin's comments that it's improved so much since you've been there. Can you talk about, for all the neighborhood associations that are listening right now, what you plan to do? How do you operationalize that communication in terms of meetings or emails or newsletters or what?
Well, I believe that we are circling around and getting ready for the next set of CAT meetings, the community activity meetings. They're probably going to be scheduled, I would guess, probably in the November timeframe to give us a little time to have the right information to share with them. Certainly we're available to answer any questions at any time. The only limitation will be, we don't want to speculate and give someone false hope. We want to be able to give them all the facts that we know.
Sure. I think even the sooner people know what you know, the better, even if it's not fully complete, because people will speculate and stress out and assume the worst, as you know, until they are provided some information from you, even if it's incomplete. I also finally wanted to ask about incumbent workers, something I asked Mr. Quinn, but obviously the Purple Line employs hundreds of workers on family supporting, mostly union contracts, including mostly workers of color. Ending their employment during a historic recession when jobs of this quality aren't really available is really unconscionable. Will the state and the designated contractors recommit to the reemployment of those workers ASAP under the same contracts? And where new contracts have to be written, will you require contractors and subcontractors to provide protections for incumbent workers?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I had some conversations with my procurement and my legal team about this. So, if you're asking about kind of bidder preference, where MTA is seeking a new company to kind of run the project in PLTC's place, we don't think there can be kind of a preference given to such a bidder based on incumbency. We can't kind of have that bidder preference in there. And as far as sort of requiring a company to hire from PLTC as part of the procurement, we don't think that's allowable either. So it's difficult for us to sort of mandate or require that someone do that in a new procurement. However,
under FTA rules, or
we're past the 5-minute rule, so please go ahead, please, Mr. Quinn.
Beg your pardon. So FTA does have guidelines around things like you can't have, say, a geographic preference. We don't have you can't put in clauses that say only Maryland businesses can go after this work. You've got to put it out there. And so, FTA guidance generally focuses on not having sort of these restrictive clauses. However, we think that individual workers will probably be kind of a different issue. So it may be that former workers will have an advantage to stay on the project kind of based on their individual project knowledge. And as for PLTC construction workers, we're certainly going to be talking to those workers and determine, who wants to stay on. And essentially also, to the extent that MTA can assume certain subcontracts, the subcontractor construction workers will very likely keep working as those employees if the state were to then assume those subcontracts.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice President Hooker. Councilmember Glass.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, everybody, for joining this important conversation for the update. And over the last 21 months, since I've been serving on the council, I've been asking about the details of this project to determine the timeline and the budget. And given the situation that we're currently in, I'm going to continue focusing on that to make sure that we get this job done. And I'm going to continue asking questions so that we reach our shared goal of creating a transit system here in the DC metro area between Montgomery County and Prince George's County that encourages economic development and promotes environmental sustainability. So toward that goal, Mr. Quinn, you mentioned, I think it was Mr. Quinn, you mentioned the short-term management and construction of this project. And so there are a number of segments of this project, particularly in Montgomery County, but also Prince George's, that currently pose serious risk to pedestrians and others who are in that area, just trying to manage their daily life. So some of those areas are Wayne Avenue and Piney Branch Road and other areas. And so can you share with us the prioritization regarding the short-term work that's going to be done and how some of these other factors will be mitigated?
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, I think you could probably speak more to our our construction inspectors and their process of evaluating this, and the staff that we've, assigned to focus specifically on, pedestrian access. Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually today, our construction staff and PLTC's construction staff, they're walking the entire alignment to look at every piece of construction and to discuss what PLT's plans are for making each site safe and available, not only for keeping people away, but for areas where people have to, tread along those areas for making the access safe. And so we expect out of today's walkthrough that there will be, mostly agreement on what's going forward, but there will be some additional discussion where areas where perhaps the state feels that, additional work needs to be done before PLTC fully transition off and demobilizes.
Well, thank you for that update. And Mr. Pollack, I think that is a very good use of everyone's time to actually walk across the entire project to see what residents and businesses are facing as work has ceased. And so I look forward to getting an update on that and letting us know what your team, their assessment is and how best to proceed. And so while they'll be walking across the two counties, I have a question for Director Conklin. As part of the broader Purple Line project, we know that Montgomery County is fully vested in revitalization updates. That the county is requesting revitalization updates, and like with the Capitol Crescent Trail and the new Bethesda elevator, and also the Green Trail in Silver Spring. And that work was supposed to be done by the concessionaire and partners. And so, Director Conklin, what are we going to do here in Montgomery County with our important side projects?
Well, that's a good question. At this time, those projects are all covered by a memorandum of understanding between MDOT MTA and the county for execution as part of this project. It's our expectation that the state will continue to work to deliver them coincident with the Purple Line. It would be very difficult to break that work out. They're in close proximity, and a lot of the dependencies between structures and other elements to do it separately would be difficult for us to do. Ultimately, we'll have to see how Matt and Kevin's work to get this back underway goes, and if we have to make difficult decisions to pull that work out, we can we can have that. But like I said, they're so intertwined that it would be difficult to do that. So we are in the position that we all are, hoping that this gets resolved and construction proceeds on the entirety of the work under one set of project management and leadership, so that the work is coordinated.
Right. Intertwined is a good word, and so keep us posted as we try to untangle the web that has been created. And the last question, given the time constraints, and I think Committee Chair Hucker alluded to this, but I'll be a little more explicit. Residents are contacting me on a daily basis about these problems, and Mr. Pollack, the walkthrough that you all are going to do will help with that assessment. But who do we refer constituents to if they have issues regarding any of the sites that are currently just left idle?
I would certainly welcome any contact that people want to have. I don't know if my email address and work phone number are out there, but certainly, I am happy to be a point of contact. We have a communications team that are already making that outreach, but point of contact can be me, absolutely.
Sure, and so I'll share that with my team and others.
Yes, please.
So thank you very much. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you. And Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Quinn and Mr. Pollack, for being here. And Mr. Conklin, of course, always good to see you. I'll jump right in because I have limited time. The ruling, I just want to make sure I understood your position and the governor's position. The ruling was not kind, in that all of the arguments that were made by the state were rejected, and there was not agreement with your position. Is it the intention of you all to move forward with those same arguments to appeal, or what is the intention in the strategy, and what can you say about that?
I can't say much. I think as it relates to the litigation that took place, I think we have a different interpretation of the contract than PLTP and PLTC have. And in terms of our litigation strategy going forward, honestly, I can't say much about it.
One of the arguments that was made by you was that it would cause irreparable harm because MDOT doesn't have the expertise, the time, money, or the training in-house to take over the project. Is that still your position?
My position is that sitting here today, we have to ramp up. Sitting here today, no, we have a limited staff and limited resources. That's not to say we can't get there, and we're going to have to get there, and we're committed to getting there. So we're, I think you heard Matt, talk a bit about, starting to augment our staff and our ability to manage construction and manage contracts, and so we're committed to doing that.
Okay. If you can't bring the marriage back together, if you have to, either way, you're going to plan and ramp up to do that.
That's exactly right.
That was one of the concerns that I had, and I know other colleagues have had, about the time period between the injunction and now, whether there was adequate or any transition planning. And it was pointed out that there wasn't, in that I guess we thought we were going to win the case. I don't know what the logic was, but could you just answer why there was not better transition planning? So we're at the point now where, people are just going to be potentially looking at these sites and nothing's going to happen. And we're sitting here with not the expertise or the ability to move things forward.
Yeah, I think PLTP, as noted in the case, had submitted a draft transition plan, which was under their sort of the plan noted in the P3 agreement under the concessionaire default or for extended delay. I think we had a very different take on it, that they were abandoning the project, and so I think our point was that to participate in transition plan meetings would be to participate in, I think, what we felt was an inappropriate abandonment of the project.
As opposed to just realizing that you could have lost, which was what happened. You thought that would weaken your position, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that there's a sense that it could weaken our position, and yeah, our position was just as they had submitted a default notice to us, and we weren't participating in transition plan meetings. Our expectation was we had issued a default notice to them, and we expected them to cure. They were under a requirement to cure, and so they refused to participate in cure meetings.
Okay. I appreciate that. I just had limited time. I have two other questions. The decision to move forward with a P3 model or to build the expertise in-house, which you said that you're working to do, which I think is proper planning in case of any eventuality. Is there a preference from the governor or from your office? Are we committed to this P3 model, or is that what you think is the path forward?
I think the P3 model has many benefits, and in the long term, the contract has several options related to resoliciting it as a P3. But ultimately, I guess I'd say that that longer term plan and longer term strategy, is still under development. To keep it as a P3, there's a lot of pieces to this. So you have the short-term construction piece that's going on right now, and then but you also do have the operations and maintenance. And so if you don't remarket it as a P3 and say you just do the design build, you still have to figure out that operations and maintenance piece. And there are transit systems around the country that they do this separately. They do a design build piece, and then they market out to do a procurement for a separate firm to come in and operate. Thing like that has happened.
Right.
So
yeah. Well, I know I could just say one last sentence, Mr. President. I appreciate it. I just think we need to reevaluate that, especially in light of 270 and 495. Imagine this failing in that type of project. It'll be an absolute disaster. This is already a disaster, and the county, particularly Montgomery County, but none of the counties, Prince George's, should have to pay another dime for this project, and the governor needs to state that it should move forward. So I know you're working hard. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you so much for this briefing, Mr. Quinn Pollock and Mr. Conklin. A lot of my questions have been answered, but I guess I just want to confirm what I heard so we can appropriately talk to our constituents. So what you're saying is that in the next 30 days, you will have a better understanding of some of the components of the path forward, but it will take approximately 6 months to begin to appropriately, I guess, deploy whatever strategy you plan to deploy to get this done?
No, I'd say over the next 30 days, we will have a better understanding of the construction work that will continue or that may be delayed, that we can communicate, say, to you and to your constituents that, hey, in your neighborhood, this is the segment that we're able to keep going, or maybe this is the segment that had been planned to start in December that now is going to start in, I don't know, March. I'm kind of making up dates here, but I think we'll be able to convey that a lot more clearly. I think what some of the questions we're getting at was sort of the longer term strategy, which I do think is more of a 4 to 6 months of what does this look like in terms of a re-procurement, or what that looks like. So I think that's what we're getting at. Matt, did I capture that appropriately?
Yes, and so I think in between that 30 days where we have more details and the 6 months where we feel more comfortable with the long-term plan, it's our intent that there will be construction activities going on.
Yes.
So it's not a nothing on the ground for 6 months.
And you will be able to then, of course, publish through your websites or anything like that, updates so that constituents understand what are the sites that are going to have to be secured because nothing is happening, and what are the sites that will have some construction moving forward in the short term, right?
Yes, absolutely. Just a quick note. So, I noted earlier I'm not an attorney. My background is in transit planning, and my career started for the first many years as a community planner. And so the whole community side and community impacts is really, really important to me, and the way that we convey that and convey it clearly. I've really been pushing the team, and Matt's been pushing the team to push for, graphic elements that folks can understand, so that you can see graphically kind of what's going on in specific neighborhoods, and to break that up not just into segments, but by neighborhoods, by council districts. I want to be sure that we can really communicate to everybody very clearly that work that's going to continue. So that's really important to me. I hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess I'm stating the obvious, but it's still disheartening to be in this position, specifically when you have these two counties, Prince George's County and Montgomery County, who are, such important counties for the state in general when it comes to economic development. And this is so tied to that. And it is, I have to say, I've heard from constituents say, wow, I never thought I would see something like this happening here in Montgomery County. Folks that maybe come from other countries where there is kind of a tradition where, big projects get started and then they're like abandoned. And of course, I'm not saying that this is what's happening here, but it is a very sore sight to have to witness so much that started to happen, and now things are just not occurring. And so, of course, we stand ready to partner with you and work with you. But as some of my colleagues have said, I think the governor also needs to put forth some clear statements about how he is going to own this major issue and how we're going to come out at the other side. He has spoken so eloquently about the importance of economic development and really getting Maryland, ahead in that way. And so again, this is a pivotal project for that. And I do look forward to hearing more from him in terms of specific support and commitment to getting this done. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Quinn and Mr. Pollack and Mr. Conklin. Nobody wants to be here right now having this conversation, and I just want to make that very clear, and appreciate a lot of the comments and questions that were asked. And I will say, as Councilmember Jawando noted, that lawsuit was, in the ruling, was not kind at all to the state. But I just want to be clear as well. I am hoping that the future bids are not kind to the concessionaire, because what is absolutely unacceptable here is a firm that committed to doing work, to delivering a project, is abandoning its obligations. And, finding loopholes in contracts and a deal that could have perhaps been stronger is fine, but commitments made should be commitments kept, and this is a concessionaire that is abandoning its project, and I hope that that is well known far and wide, because I imagine this isn't the last project that the companies bid on, and their actions here should be well known and should be taken with a deep degree of caution, and I hope it has a significant impact. I appreciate the comments about the pedestrian safety issues that Councilmember Glass mentioned. I'm glad that you were going to be walking this project. I'm happy to join you in any part of that in and along my district, because we all hear about these issues a lot. We walk them a lot, and I think it's important to remember, and I hope that you will acknowledge, that this construction has taken away pedestrian access, has taken away trail access, has taken away safe opportunities for our residents. And it was a short-term pain with the promise of long-term significant gain. And we need to mitigate that short-term pain right now, as this is indefinitely worked through, and make sure that the long-term gain comes through as promised, as quickly as possible without any further delay. And I will just say that I have yet to meet a resident who feels very strongly about who builds this.
Yeah.
The Purple Line needs to be built. even those who might have had concerns with different aspects of this, the current situation is unacceptable. Having holes in the community where we should have one of the most important connectors within and among our communities is not acceptable, and so we need to make that happen. So just a few questions. You mentioned, the next 30 days you're going to figure out the short-term construction needs, what is going to continue, what is going to be delayed. 6 months you feel it's going to take in order to make a long-term decision on how to proceed with the project. Is that an accurate timeline based on, because a few things have been said, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Is that accurate, Mr. Quinn?
Yeah, I'd say 4 to 6 months. I think some of it depends on the path that the litigation takes. And so, I don't want to speculate too much about that, but yes, I think generally your timeline is correct.
Okay, and so it seems to me there's 3 options. One is you somehow find a fair and reasonable settlement after this ruling, and somehow that's able to be reconciled. I think it seems unlikely, but possible at this point. Number 2 would be the state takes over the project entirely and ramps up, as you had said before, and brings in-house the expertise. Number 3 would be rebidding in some form or fashion a new public-private partnership, either for the construction, the design build, or for the total project as it was previously constructed. Those are the 3?
I think that's accurate. I think the one nuance I'd put on that is that it could be somewhat of a combination of some of those. So it could be a combination of the state does some of the management of construction in the short term while we re-procure it in the long term. So it could be kind of a 2 and 3. It could be we reach a settlement and maybe some pieces of it stay and we still re-procure some pieces of it. Sort of a 1 and 3 combo. I think there's some permutations in there, and again, I think part of that depends also on the litigation, but there's lots of paths, lots of kind of permutations this could take in the long term.
Has the state analyzed the cost implications and the time implications in terms of any potential delays of delivering the project that has already been delayed based on the different options that are available, whether it's a settlement, whether it's the state taking on the project, or whether it's being rebid, excuse me?
Yeah. Under each of the scenarios, we've definitely taken a look at those timelines and any potential delays that could happen to the project.
And could we expect that to be made public at any point?
Yeah, I think as we look to what construction, a lot depends on, again, on the path this could take. How much work we're able to keep going. If the state's able to keep a really high level of work going, that obviously reduces delay. A lot of that depends on those evaluations of those subcontractors, the assignment of the subcontractors, and so I don't think we're at a point where we can kind of talk about exactly what that looks like. But again, in the next 30 days, and then in the next 4 to 6 months, as we look at that longer term procurement strategy, I think we'll have a better answer to your question.
I'm out of time. I just hope that the public will be shared that information specifically. What are the options? How much they're going to cost? Who's going to pay for them, and when they're going to be delivered specifically, because this is too important a project. We have too much invested in this project for the public not to know exactly what the options are, who's going to bear the cost for them, and when they're going to be delivered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Friedson. Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you. Great questions. First of all, I just want to say overall, we haven't heard a lot from the governor. He's left it to the departments to speak, and I just want to say, the governor's not a passenger on this. He's driving this train, and we need him to drive this train, take control of the situation, and make sure his top team is spending the time that's needed. Secondly, it sounds like we're into 4 to 6 months of potentially kind of a limbo as other issues are worked out. No one's saying that that's exactly what's going to happen, but it sounds very possible. So in that time, we've got to secure the construction sites and address the staging areas and all of those issues. And it sounds like that is not something that needs to wait 30 days, to then decide what to do and then
have a couple more months before something happens. So could we have from you, very prompt follow-up as to how you'll immediately proceed, for the indefinite short term, where you can reopen access to things, how to clear up, pedestrian access, all of the issues that are resolved, need to be resolved. How can we be sure that you will be able to quickly follow up on those items, please?
Sure. So I think what you've outlined is exactly what we're looking to try to have kind of nailed down in the next 30 days. And, Matt and I are happy to come back to this group and do a more detailed presentation of that work.
So you're looking at all the sites in the next 30 days to evaluate what changes need to happen, or can you explain a little bit more?
Yeah. So I think over the next 30 days, we're taking a look at the entire alignment, where there is construction ongoing that the state can potentially come in and manage. Part of that evaluation is a sort of a legal evaluation of the subcontracts that the state may be able to manage. I think part of that is a staffing capacity of taking a look at our capacity to manage those projects right now, as well as the ramp up of state resources to manage that work. But I think, again, that's what we're looking to sort of nail down in the next 30 days, and to be able to look at each of you and say segment by segment, district by district, here's the work that's going to proceed over the next few months, over the next year. And then again, I think we're looking at a few more months to really nail down what sort of the longer term project delivery strategy is going to be. But right now the focus is absolutely how to keep construction moving along the corridor and where that is going to be able to continue.
Okay. And I know, Matt, you'll be in touch with Chris Conklin, our DOT director, as we proceed on all of those sites, and the county can follow up with you. Last thing I want to say is just, the Purple Line is essential for the future of this county, and it builds the kind of transportation infrastructure that we need. None of that has really changed. It will deliver incredible economic benefits. We'll be able to build terrific communities all along the route. It's going to connect the east and the west. It's going to be part of an integrated region. It even connects to the MARC. It connects the whole state into parts of Montgomery County. It just, the value in this project can't be understated. And we need, the sooner we deliver it, the sooner we get those benefits, accelerating into our economy and into our communities. And so it has faced many dark hours in the past, and we're gonna pull this through once again. But no doubt, this is bitterly disappointing. I think Councilmember Navarro said disheartening. It is, and we've got to get this done. So we need the governor to step up and really assert strong leadership here, and let's get this project finished. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
So I'm not going to belabor a lot of the points that you've already heard, but let me just stress again from another council member whose district doesn't touch any of those areas, but certainly one that still benefits, because at the end of the day, as folks connect to mass transit, it affects all of us in this county and, quite frankly, in this region. And so from that perspective, it is incredibly important for us to ensure that mass transit modality continues in an effective way, and also gives confidence to our constituents, right? Their faith in government. And when you look at the comments that all of the articles, whether it's Washington Post or Bethesda Bee, when we have missteps like this, what it does is it erodes constituent confidence in government's ability to be able to manage projects. And now, in this case, I will just say this. There's been a lot of concern, and rightfully so. People are already economically stressed. And so to then have something like this looming, where we're talking about tens of millions, not hundreds of millions of dollars potential in terms of what may happen and who may be on the hook, folks are starting to ask the questions about who's going to have to pay for that. And I think it's important for the governor and for the department to come out and tell people who is going to be on the hook for this responsibility. And I know that's not something that we know right now because we don't even know what the costs are. And so I understand that. I accept that answer. However, as quickly as possible, we need to make sure that that information is out there so that folks understand. And let me be very clear, Montgomery County has been supportive of this project when you came and asked us for additional funds. You came to us, you asked Prince George's, and we ponied up. Our constituents paid at the gate and said, we believe in this project, it's important for us, we want this to happen. I don't think it's fair to come back to our constituents again and ask again based on, again, some of the missteps. And I do agree with Councilmember Friedson and what he said. I mean, there's a concessionaire who I believe has taken advantage of a situation and really should be doing the best for what we want to see happen for this region, for this state. And that's unfortunate. But that being said, you know, we've got to move forward. And it's my hope that the governor will certainly step up and do what he needs to do to ensure that the responsibility is not spread out again to jurisdictions that continue to struggle and are doing the right thing. I mean, Montgomery County hasn't done anything wrong in the sense of how this happened. And so from that perspective, therefore, shouldn't be held liable when it comes to bearing the financial burdens associated with some of those missteps. And so I'm not sure if you have anything, Mr. Quinn. I see you nodding. Mr. Pollack, I see you nodding. But it's good, again, to hear from the department that that is understood and heard because constituents are watching, they're listening, and they want to hear the same thing.
Thank you. No comments. Okay. Thank you very much, Councilmember Rice. Was there anything else, or Councilmember Rice, was there anything else?
No, not for me.
Okay.
I was just going to wait and see if Mr. Quinn or Ms. Pollack was going to respond.
Sorry,
It's Mr. Quinn.
I do,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, so I appreciate all your comments, and I think you're right on. You know, I will note that, you know, I think the governor has very much stepped up in support of this project. You know, he was an advocate for getting the federal funding to FFGA for this project. There's significant state dollars and resources that have been spent to date on this project. And you know, this project certainly has his commitment, and I think it's demonstrated here in us noting, you know, really our commitment, the state's commitment to getting this job done. And I think your point about communicating with residents again is right on. You know, I know the emails and phone calls I'm getting. I don't represent the areas you represent, and so I can only imagine the phone calls and emails you're getting. And so I respect 100% what you're saying, and as soon as we're able to really communicate that path forward, that game plan, we will absolutely do that.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Albornoz. Might we add, we're at 9:58:19, Mr. Quinn, so we're coming pretty close to time frame. Councilmember Albornoz.
I'll come in under. So as an optimist myself, I appreciate the presentation that optimistically looks at moving this project forward despite the challenges that my colleagues have articulated so well. But I do need to join the echo of comments that while I appreciate the optimistic assurance that this project will move forward by the staff who are most directly associated with this project, it's critical for the governor to make that same statement. There are organizations and communities who have been opposed to this project that smell blood in the water and are hoping that this will fall through. And I think they and many others, including especially those that support this project, need to hear from the governor that this will move forward. This is a punch in the gut, maybe even a low blow, but it is going to move forward. And obviously, we need to recognize the elephant in the room, which is it's happening. This is all happening at the worst possible time. The economic outlook for the county and the state look bleak, to say the least, from a financial perspective, and this will impact other projects, both at the county and state level. And so we need to begin the very painful process of level setting expectations, a term we hear a lot around here, but to make sure our communities understand that this project will move forward, but not without cost under the current circumstances. And this council stands ready to support, as you heard from all of my colleagues, in any way we can to both communicate to our communities, and we really need to do more to communicate to our multicultural communities what's going on, because people are exasperated, confused, frustrated, and frankly angry And so that is critically important moving forward. So with that, I'll defer back to you, Mr. President. No need to comment. You've already done so. But please, if the governor could make a statement, it would help all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. And to Mr. Quinn and Mr. Pollock, we did want to note that we came in on time. I just want you to know that it's 10 o'clock. So I just as a friendly nudge. But I did want to note that, there is concern about the whole process for P3s. This does not touch my area as well, the Purple Line. It certainly will affect my area because anyone riding the Metro could certainly use the Purple Line, and anyone going to University of Maryland could certainly use the Purple Line. So it certainly could affect their area. But we are concerned about the whole P3 situation for 270 and 495. My area, 270 is where it's affected. So please keep that in mind as well. And with that, thank you both and Mr. Conklin. We don't want to take Mr. Conklin for granted here, but he certainly is a major part for Montgomery County on this project. Thank you all for being with us, and we sincerely appreciate your time, commitment, and working with us so that we can be very pleased that this project will be completed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
And with that,
thank you.
To my colleagues, we need to, I did want to note about the minutes. The minutes for May 5th, 2020 have been distributed, and unless there's any corrections, they're going to be approved as received. Okay. They are approved as received. The next item that we have is our consent calendar, and we need a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Rice.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Navarro. I see no speakers. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And do I count 9? I count 9. It passes unanimously. Thank you very much. I guess I'm supposed to ask anybody opposed, but I can count to 9. So thank you very much. The next item that we have, we're now actually a little early, but the next item that we have is the council sitting as the Board of Health. And I guess we're not lucky enough to have Miss Dr. Gales here. So I guess we're going to have to call. Yes.
You had moved rather quickly through the consent calendar. I actually had wanted to say something or two.
Well, the only reason I moved quickly is because nobody said they wanted to speak.
Yeah,
so.
I know. It's not your fault, my fault.
Okay, well, go ahead. We have time. It's like a party. Go ahead. Go ahead.
What I needed to do was pull up my agenda because I was still in the presentation, and as I was clicking, you had moved on.
Okay.
So I apologize. I'm going to have to go by memory because I'm still trying to pull up the agenda. But I believe we are introducing today the appropriation request from MCPS around tutoring. And I know this will, I saw the letter that you and the committee chair, Councilmember Rice, sent over to MCPS asking for details about a wide array of supports for young people and students, including the tutoring program. I just wanted to say I'm really eager to see more details about this. I'm glad that the governor secured or used $100 million of the CARES Act funding for tutoring around the state, and that MCPS has requested or secured about $13 million for tutoring in the county. And we're going to need to really go all out to mitigate the impact of the loss of school time that our children are facing. And I would very much like to know details. I had reached out some time ago to MCPS to see what more information they could share about the tutoring program. They were still working on it. I know you'll get a presentation, I'm sure, at the Education Committee. But more than anything, I just wanted to say I think this is terrific. It's a great use of funding, and I think we need to almost certainly make a multi-year commitment to tutoring to try to remediate the reading loss and other critical learning loss that's going to happen. We're all familiar with the concept of the summer slide, And that's a very real loss of academic achievement or knowledge during times when there's less instruction happening. And I think we all know that we're gonna see that happening because of this past spring and this fall. And so intensive tutoring for kids who are experiencing that kind of loss, I think will be a very appropriate solution, and one that we ought to make a longer term commitment to. So when we see more details about the $13 million and how that will be expended, I know we'll be in a better position to comment on that. But for example, I'd love to know if nonprofit organizations will be contracted with. I've heard from some that would be willing to step up and provide these services. I know there are a lot of questions that are out there about it. So just wanted to mention my enthusiasm for that particular issue, and looking forward to more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. See, you started a trend, Councilmember Reamer. Councilmember Rice, please.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for teeing that up, Councilmember Reamer. I too had missed the opportunity. We were moving quickly, and so I just relegated it as it was fine. But now that we do have some additional time, let me just say that this is incredibly important. And let me first compliment Montgomery County Public Schools for what they're doing, because tomorrow, Wednesday, is actually a quote-unquote tutoring day. It's a day in which children have the opportunity to log online and get special time with each of their teachers to talk about any of the questions they may have, challenges that they may be having with concepts. It truly is embracing that ideology that we do need some additional one-on-one, one-on-two, one-on-three time that's provided. And I encourage all of our folks that are watching who have children in the system, who have family members who are in the system, to utilize that. I will just highlight something that you said, Councilman Bremer, that I think is incredibly important, which is the long term in terms of our planning this. Keep in mind, this is a key component of what's in the Kerwin Commission recommendations, our blueprint for the future of Maryland schools. And unfortunately, it was the governor who vetoed this that kept us from actually getting this started. These funds that would have gone to help stand up tutoring and mentoring inside of each of our schools throughout the state of Maryland was actually lost because the governor decided to veto this bill. And so I just want to be very clear that there is a long-term plan. The long-term plan is included in the Kerwin Commission recommendations. And so from that perspective, what this does is it gets us through not only the global pandemic, but also the time frame and in which I'm hoping that the General Assembly will be able to overturn the governor's veto and move forward with the Kerwin Commission recommendation. So I couldn't agree with you more. This is incredibly important. Some of the projections when it comes to loss, both for reading and math, are in the neighborhood of 30 to 50%. And so that's why this has to happen now. And so kudos to the school system working with the state in terms of figuring out how to really get some federal grant funding that's going to help to stand this up. And thank you to our nonprofit community. We've been in contact with our Collaboration Council, working with them to work with local nonprofits to try and make all of this happen. That's all encapsulated in the letter that Council President Katz and I sent over, making sure that we go in this direction and understanding just how important it is. So I really appreciate you, Councilmember Reamer, highlighting this, but I know that my colleagues that are on the Education and Culture Committee, our former school board member, certainly knows all too well and is incredibly passionate about this. This is something we've been talking about for a very long time, and so it's great to see that this is happening now. We need it, but more to come in the future. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really appreciate those comments. I think that there's no doubt the MCPS has found itself in a very difficult situation and has come along, I think, in a stellar way, because to have to adapt to this really uncertain and unpredictable times really takes an institution leadership that is willing to be as proactive on the spot as possible. I keep thinking about how way back in March, we were talking about all of this as if by June, we would be kind of back to normal. And here we are. And the reality is that we don't know exactly when things are going to be so-called back to normal. We don't know how these transitions are going to take place. And I think it is so critical that we think about those students that also have had to adapt in families to what seems to be something a little bit more long-term. So I also want to thank MCPS and the leadership, the Board of Education, the superintendent, everybody, staff who is working around the clock really to deliver a great education for our students. And this component would be very, very critical. Also, I just wanted to point out that tomorrow the FED Committee and GO is going to meet to address the disposition of 410 Randolph Road and Bushy Drive. It is very rare that we have public land, public sites that we can use for affordable housing, but this is part of the Bears Mill Corridor sector plan that we adopted, and I'm very excited about the possibility there of more affordable housing types that I know we are missing, that's missing middle. So, you know, townhouses and rental, multifamily residential units, as well as for single family homes. And so this is, I think, a really awesome partnership that I'm very excited about. So tomorrow we'll talk a little bit more, but Habitat for Humanity is teaming up with a developer who has done this type of work. And I think it's great that we're able to take advantage of this particular site for that. So stay tuned. We will meet tomorrow to discuss this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Giwando.
Thank you. I didn't want to mess up the 3 people in a row from the Education Committee, so we got it in. I did want to speak to the MCPS money, and just really, this is really difficult. And I say this from not only personal experience, having, you know, a first grader, a third grader, and a fourth grader, and an infant all in the house here, trying to manage online learning. It's hard for parents, you know, and we're blessed to be able to be working from home and have support. I get up every day, you know, at 7 o'clock thinking about the people who are punching their shift, who don't have the resources to log their kids on, which you need almost a PhD to do. I know MCPS is working hard, but getting on to these various Zoom rooms and, you know, and then the children that, you know, are just really struggling to engage. You know, some of which, if you were in kindergarten last year, like my daughter, you had half a year, and then you had another half a year off, and you haven't been back, and you're supposed to look at a screen in first grade and absorb information. It's a very difficult situation for so many families and students, and so I do commend MCPS for working really hard, and we're going to have to keep working hard. This tutoring day and this money is a big part of that. We're going to have to continue to be innovative, and I know my colleagues and I on the Education and Culture Committee and all of my colleagues, we're going to be working to do as much as we can to support different strategies to mitigate these issues that students and families are dealing with, because it's serious. We understand it, and we know that people are working hard, and it's hard on the educators who are trying to deliver for their students. So I really appreciate this funding, and I'm glad Councilmember Navarro brought up the Bushy Drive. I'll just say briefly, this is a win-win-win. This is a perfect example of what we should do with public land. You know, I introduced a bill that I'm hoping we can bump up and consider it soon, that would make this not just something that happens occasionally, but that would mandate that we have to have certain levels of affordability. One of the great things about this project, when we dispose of public land, is that these household incomes are going to have a range of 30 to 70% of AMI, and it's because we were able to take a product that we owned and partner with the private sector and with Habitat and a nonprofit provider. And this is going to deliver great types of housing in a great corridor that is a gateway to Rockville and job opportunities and other things. So I'm really excited about this project, and I hope we can make this the stated norm and move my legislation forward that would help do that. So those are the only 2 things I wanted to speak to. The public safety money. Also, some of that, just because there was questions we got last night, my understanding of that money, and if council staff wants to comment, but is that it can be used for a whole range of things like student health, mental health supports, other things. This is not related to the SRO issue that was asked by me from some people, but really happy that we're giving a lot of money to support our students in MCPS at this important time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Albornoz.
Thank you, Mr. President. So 4010 Randolph Road was my home away from home for 12 years as the headquarters of the Department of Recreation. And as Councilmember Giwando said, and Councilmember Navarro and others, it is a win-win for us to dispose of property in an area that can provide such a unique opportunity for our community to enhance housing. And to those organizations who are disappointed to see one of the few functional public theaters that we have in the county, thanks to Councilmember Navarro's leadership, there are plans within the Wheaton area to add an arts and entertainment facility, and those plans are ongoing. Fortunately, that's not very far from this particular facility, and I know my colleagues and I, particularly under Councilmember Rice's leadership on the Education and Culture Committee, are fully committed to providing theater opportunities, arts-based opportunities, capital construction projects in our county moving forward. And that building, though, I'm not going to be entirely sad to see it go. It had lots and lots of challenges. While I was at the Department of Recreation, we had to implement the COOP plan more than a dozen times because of the terrible condition of that building. So, and those staff are going to be moving down to the new Park and Planning Headquarters building with a number of other county agencies, which is a big win. And then finally, Mr. President, I wanted to highlight item number J. This is an extension of an initiative that Councilmember Navarro and I also worked on to expand youth development programming under the leadership of Luis Cardona and the Street Outreach Network. And YMCA Youth and Family Services and many other organizations are doing tremendous work to provide support to our youth, particularly during the pandemic, addressing some of those social and emotional issues that are critical, and they are perfectly positioned to be able to carry out that work. And I appreciate Luis and his team's leadership and the entire HHS department for all they're doing to support our youth during this difficult time. So with that, I yield back to you, Mr. Council President. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Reamer wanted to have another point, but I do want to note that Dr. Gales is now on our Zoom call. So as soon as Councilmember Reamer, who's right now is the last speaker for this, as soon as he is finished, we will go right to Dr. Gales. Councilmember Reamer.
Okay. So we would move ahead of the agenda. It might be an issue for everybody who wanted to tune in to watch, but okay. I just wanted to comment on the introduction of the subdivision staging policy, which I hope we will rename the growth policy as proposed by the planning board. This is a really significant policy issue, and we are going to be tackling it. This is something that we tackle every 4 years, and this policy has a lot of rules that influence economic development and housing and the ability of our community to get what we envision in our planning as we move forward. So I just wanted to make a note. We're going to be getting a briefing today. It may be that we don't have a ton of time for discussion during that briefing, and then we're going to have a public hearing tonight about this policy, and then the committees will be proceeding with a number of meetings, and we'll take it up to pass it by November 15th. It'll be a heavy lift, but it certainly is doable. This policy is really crucial as we think about how we are going to accelerate our economic development coming out of the coronavirus crisis. We have got to fix some of these policies that are holding back our county and our growth. And one of them is certainly the housing moratoriums. We have had this policy that effectively is a ban on new housing in many parts of the county. And that ban is having all kinds of detrimental effects. Certainly it prevents us from collecting impact tax revenues that we need now to support school construction. But it is also shutting down our housing market. It is contributing to the large-scale problem that we have now, that our annual housing production is about half of what it once was in the historical norm. And that kind of weak housing production creates all kinds of unintended or perhaps intended problems with housing supply. It's harder for young families to find a good place to live, an appropriate place for them to live in the county. It's harder for empty nesters to downsize. There's less supply for them to downsize into in desirable places where they would like to locate a newly modified or retrofitted suburban area becoming an urban area. That's a perfect place for empty nesters to downsize into, but they can't because new housing is banned in many of those parts of the county under moratorium policies that we work really hard to try to address, but there's a better way, there's a better approach to the policy in the first place. So what we've received from the planning board, I think, is a very strong recommendation. There's a wide array of really strong policies in this new recommendation. I'm very enthusiastic in a very general way, but then also specifically, I just wanted to comment. We've been working a lot on housing. We're part of the regional push to help ensure that as a region we meet our housing needs and we don't become the kind of region, we don't continue to grow in the direction of the kind of region where there's just an ongoing housing crisis. It creates affordability crises. It creates a lot of inequality. And so doing our part means a lot of different things. And one of them is removing the ban on new housing and coming up with a better way to manage the associated issues like school capacity and transportation and other issues. So I want to thank the planning board for the great amount of work that they've put into it. They have a really exceptionally capable team. I think it's a very strong recommendation. It's been more than a year in the making, and I look forward to taking it up at the council. I do want to note the county executive has urged us not to enact this policy and to just continue with the status quo. I don't think that's acceptable. I really think we need to figure out how to come back better, and part of that is dealing with some of these long-standing, problematic policies like the ban on new housing in the county. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Gales is on the call right now. And to your point, Councilmember Raymer, we do record this, so anyone that is not hearing it live will be able to certainly hear everything that is being said by Dr. Gales and others. So Dr. Gales, thank you for being here. I don't see you there. I do see you. Thank you for being here. And I always like to ask, and you just jumped over on my screen, so you're very quick here this morning. I do like to ask if you're under a time constraint as well, because we certainly will honor that as best we can.
Yes, I mean, yeah. So I think if we can, be done, make sure we take the time to answer the questions, but no later than noon. I think that gives us...
No later than noon. Okay, we will honor that. Thank you. So, and if you could begin, please. I don't know whether others have joined you yet. I know others are trying to join us, but Dr. Stoddard, I say his name. So please, Dr. Gales.
Sure. Well, good morning. It's been a while since we've been together formally, although we've had many conversations. And thank you all for continuing to stay engaged. For the folks at home, as all of the council members were on recess, but they were still very actively engaged in all aspects of the COVID-19 response, participating in numerous briefings throughout the week, wherever they were. So thank you for your continued efforts and dedication. I do want to, as part of the presentation, to walk through quickly to set the stage of where we stand right now in terms of our numbers since we last met formally, There's been lots of conversations about schools reopening, the governor moving the state to phase 3, us as a jurisdiction choosing not to move to phase 3. And so just want to provide some updates to those numbers and then go through some of the other key points to address some of the questions that, or anticipating some of the questions that I know that you all may have. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen. It looks like the host is disabled and not allowed me to screen share. I was going to walk through our data dashboard, so I'm not sure who the host of the meeting is, if I'm able to do that, if we could get that taken care of. All right, thank you so much. Okay, so you should be looking at the data dashboard, and this is the front-facing dashboard that we have available for the public, the general public. And so I just want to walk through these quickly to show you some of the trends and where we stand. And so one of the key measures that we've talked about frequently is just looking at the number of new cases. And so when you think back to late June and early July, we saw daily cases dropping. We saw averages as low as 50. And at that time, we moved from phase 1 to phase 2. And since then, unfortunately, we've seen this steady kind of plateau and uptick of cases through the end of July, through August. And as we currently stand in September, or we saw in the month of September, we've seen the cases gradually increase. And so, you know, for the folks at home, again, you know, when there was conversation talking about the state moving to phase 3, it's important to understand that the level of numbers that we saw at the state level and the county level were higher than where we were when we made the statement, the move from phase 1 to phase 2 in July. Now, following the science and the data, you would think that moving from phase 2 to phase 3, we would have sustained lower daily case numbers on a regular basis before we made that move. So we've received a lot of questions saying, well, you know, the numbers are what they are improving, why haven't we moved to phase 3? Well, one of the big reasons is, as you can see, the numbers are actually increasing slightly. And so over the last week, we, along with the state and other jurisdictions, have seen slight increases in our test positivity as well as the cases per 100,000. So, for example, our test positivity has been holding at 2.4%. It currently sits at 3%. And interestingly, the state total has also increased over that time and is sitting somewhere between 3.6 and 3.7%. Similarly, when we break down cases by 100,000, and the reason why we do that is it allows for a more even comparison between population differences. Our number went from 6.1, 6.3 to now it's at 8, and it had gone as high as 9.3 earlier in the week. So I want to make sure folks at home understand that we have not driven, unfortunately, the numbers down as low as we would like. Back to, you know, remember in July we had a couple of days where we saw cases in the mid-30s. Now, we're not there. And so, in fact, our 3-day average is sitting at 96 right now. And what that means is we, again, are committed from the public health perspective to not let that be our baseline and say, oh, well, we're cool with that. That's just kind of our ongoing total. We want to get those numbers lower to demonstrate at minimum moderate transmission, which, if you recall from our previous conversations, would be a level of 30 to 35 cases per day, and ultimately get that to low transmission, which would represent approximately 10 to 12 cases on a daily basis in our jurisdiction. Now, what's interesting within that, now let me also take a step back, is we've noticed a couple phenomena across the state. The majority of cases now, new cases that are coming up on a daily basis, are between the ages of 0 and 30. So 25%, approximately 25% of those cases are 0 to 19-year-olds, and the remaining are the 20 to 29-year-olds. Now, this is very different from the pandemic when it started, where we saw it skew towards older populations. And so newer cases, higher percentage in the younger population. And what's also happened is when you look at, we're seeing less severity of illness in terms of, we've had multiple days when we aren't seeing any deaths in our jurisdiction. And we're also, the increased cases are happening in the setting of decreased hospitalization. So at this time, we haven't seen a comparable increase in hospitalizations folks in the ICU, folks showing up to the emergency room with symptoms, and acute bed usage. This number here is the percentage that are tied to COVID and the overall number. That hasn't changed significantly, as well as the ICU bed use or ventilator use. And all of those are proxies to, again, give us a sense of what's the severity of illness in the patients who are testing positive and the symptoms that they're experiencing. Now, the challenge with that is I don't want that to give folks a false sense of security to say, well, hey, everybody gets it, it's fine because, they're normal and they're healthy. Well, because the challenge is we know that young people have older relatives. They come into contact with others who may be more likely and more predisposed to having more severe symptoms of illness. And particularly when we see an increase in cases and an increased percentage in that population, it's a lag period between, being able to see if in fact we're going to see an uptick or a number of cases in those more vulnerable populations and start to see an increase in our hospital utilization by those different cohorts. Now, when we look at the percentage, this is looking at our test positivity. Again, the test positivity number has vacillated somewhere between 2.4% and 3.3%, I think is the highest that we got over the last week. But it's important to note that we have seen an increase, and it's sitting at 3%. What's also been interesting, a phenomenon that has happened since we last met formally, is we have seen multiple days where there have been low test numbers across the state. In fact, there was a day earlier, towards the end of last week, where there were only 9,000 tests resulted. Now, this is much different from where we were in July and early August, where we were averaging 25 to 28,000 tests across the state on a daily basis. Now, throughout this time period, our numbers have held steady. As you know, we rebooted and pivoted our testing program, and now we as a county are close to some of the daily totals that we had experienced, and that's inclusive of the county testing apparatus as well as the entire healthcare enterprise across the county. Now, other data point here, you can just see here's the average number of tests administered on a daily basis. We've got our 3-day rolling average here, and this looks at the number of days within which we have hit our goals. Now, I'm going to stop sharing that piece, and I want to bring up one other additional measure. It's our R0 values here. We have updated those, and they will be updated on our county website. So you can see how the rate of transmission in the month of September we actually saw a peak of 1.4 on September 5th. And the number has dropped back below zero. I'm sorry, not below zero, but below 1, and sits at 0.97. And so in the last couple of days, we've seen an uptick in our rate of transmission. We've also seen an uptick in terms of our red cap numbers. And again, as a reminder for folks at home, the red cap numbers represent the positive results reported based upon when they were actually collected. And we have seen multiple days within the last week of case totals over 100. This suggests that we have seen, secondary to the Labor Day holiday, as well as the state moving to phase 3, we have seen, I feel comfortable saying that we have seen an increase in cases secondary to those things happening. So moving to phase 3 across the state, we haven't, but the state has, and the Labor Day holiday suggesting that we've seen an increase in cases secondary to activities and behaviors during that time period. Now, to go briefly through some updates and always, move to Dr. Stoddard and have time for questions. Since we last met, the governor did provide guidelines, and the health department provide guidelines for schools to reopen and categories to reopen. We met per the state guidelines, we met the criteria for test positivity is we were below 5. We did not meet the criteria for based upon cases, as we are above 5 cases per 100,000. And I think a couple of days ago there was only one jurisdiction that actually met both criteria to be able to open up fully for in-person schooling. Now, since the schools have reopened, as we've talked about in one of our previous briefings, we have had 12 schools. All of them have been non-public schools, 12 schools to have cases involving students, staff, or teachers in some capacity. One of those situations, it has been made public now in the news at the Holy Redeemer School. There was a teacher who tested positive. The classroom of students were quarantined secondary to that exposure, and we have seen and we found out that there's at least one of those students who has tested positive for COVID-19 during that quarantine period. Now, in addition to those 12 schools, we have had 7 other schools have to have some level of quarantine in place secondary to the reporting of a COVID-like illness. And again, for the folks at home to understand, the reason why both of these are reported is per the guidelines, schools have a responsibility and businesses have a responsibility to report to the local health department COVID confirmed cases by lab results, as well as any illnesses in staff members or anyone in that facility with COVID-like symptoms. And when COVID-like symptoms are reported, they're given the same guidance as if it's treated as a COVID illness until it's proven negative by a negative lab result. And so there have been instances where schools have called in and said, we have some COVID-like illnesses present. We've provided guidance to quarantine. And when the test has come back negative, we've been able to provide guidance for them to remove the quarantine and go back to business. Now, from the testing perspective, we have launched our 2 test tents at the Randolph. Councilmember Albanos was talking about his former offices on Randolph Road. That is the site of one of the test tents that we got from the CDC, or the test trailers, and the other one is in the Gaithersburg area at the Lake Forest Mall. They are both operational, and we continue our other test sites, including the Silver Spring Civic Center on Mondays and Thursdays. Now, we have not launched the pop-up testing sites again. We're in the process of doing that, hopefully as early as next week. We have spent the time refining the registration process, the online portals, and coming up with processes to make sure that people get their results in a timely manner. And that's what the team has been focusing on. So the scheduling platform is back up and live. We've been calling folks with their results to make sure they get them within a 48-hour period. And we continue to overperform the mitigation testing capacity numbers and recommendations per the Harvard School of Public Health formula. We have not achieved the suppression level of testing that we've talked about before. And to be perfectly candid, it's a challenge to do that, particularly in the setting that all of the different reopening provisions and guidelines don't support suppression. So it's challenging to balance those two, but we obviously will continue to increase our testing platform to make sure that more folks have access to testing. Our ready responders continue to test out in the community and within the shelter community as well. Now, we have continued to engage with other laboratories to bring them online, to provide support for our current apparatus, as well as explore the opportunity to bring in rapid testing modules in the future, point of care testing. Now, this governor, and as part of his announcement, I believe it's last week, talked about working with a number of other states to create opportunities. I think there's an allocation of 250,000 rapid tests for the state of Maryland. What I can tell you since that announcement, the only information that we have so far is that there will be 250,000 test kits for the state of Maryland, and the priority will be that those tests will be used for nursing home facilities and I believe assisted living facilities. I don't have any further information beyond that to share with you all at this time. Once we find out more, we will work to make sure that you are aware of those prioritizations and dissemination plan. We have met with at least 4 other laboratories to discuss bringing them online to support our platform. We have successfully executed a contract with Scion Labs, who may recall has been working with us over the last month, thanks to the provisions by the Department of Health to help with that bridge contract. So that is formally in place, and we again have met with at least 4 other laboratories and are at different phases in terms of contract processes and looking through their scopes of work. I do want to also mention the contact tracing piece. We continue to work with our state partners, and when we get those reports, they're sent to Naeem, who's coordinating those data efforts and providing that with you all. The consistent themes that come up is we see large family gatherings tied to positive cases, as well as potential worksite exposures. And so we've said this from the beginning that, we have a high percentage of folks who had to go to work throughout the pandemic and not been able to work from home and have been at higher risk for potential exposure to the virus. Now, there also was a question, and I know Councilmember Reamer asked about this. You asked about the phone apps that the governor mentioned as a part of the press conference a couple weeks ago. I unfortunately still don't have any more information to share with you. We've not been provided any more information from the state on that or from the governor's office. So we, again, and I'm not dismissing your question, when we get more information in terms of how the state plans to use that, I'll be happy to share that with you. And the last thing I want to highlight or talk about is vaccine dissemination planning. We had multiple meetings yesterday with the National Capital Region health officers as well as the state health officers. And one of the things that we had discussed from the National Capital Region is, again, recognizing our location is working together to design a regional dissemination plan for a vaccine. Now, you may hear on TV that there is a vaccine that's coming in October. I will say this, and I think I can speak for most other public health officials out there, we're not confident that a vaccine will be readily available as early as October. And Dr. Nesbitt, by virtue of her position in D.C., sitting at the state level, has been a part of different conversations with HHS to discuss the vaccine dissemination plan for COVID-19. We're still awaiting, much like these other situations, we're awaiting information from the federal level to determine what their prioritization plan will be and their allocation plan to different states. And so we are all waiting for that information, but we are looking forward to coming up with proactive plans to design a strategy where we're working together across the region to make vaccines available when they become available. My best guess, I'm hopeful that we will have a successful candidate by early 2021 that we will be able to disseminate to our population. Now, just one last thing, I keep thinking of other things since we've not met in a while, is, again, for the folks at home watching, there have been some concerns about one of the vaccine trials in England through AstraZeneca, and I wanted to make sure that folks understood exactly what's happening. Now, in a standard vaccine or when you're looking at a new drug therapy or drug trial, we do different phases. And phase 3 is important because phase 3 is a large-scale trial. You're testing thousands of people to see what the side effects of the particular treatment or agent is. And what happens in those trials is sometimes people develop symptoms that can't be explained. And when that happens, the trial is halted. And if it's one individual or multiple individuals, they undergo a full workup to understand if the symptoms or particular illness that they are experiencing is tied to the treatment that they're undergoing or the vaccine or medication that they're getting, or if it's tied to something entirely different that has nothing to do with the trial. And so that's what happened with one of the patients in England. They developed neurological symptoms, and they're undergoing a workup to determine if those neurological symptoms have absolutely nothing to do with the vaccine trial or tied with the vaccine. Once that's determined, if it's determined that the side effects that they're experiencing are not tied to the trial, then the trial is able to move forward and continue. And so this also underscores why there is a formal process in place through the FDA to study the potential side effects and effects of the different medications and therapies so that we have a clear understanding when we do launch at large scale of what the potential side effects are, and we've done everything we can to maximize the safety of that particular treatment or therapy. So that's why these processes are in place. That's why we don't rush them, because it's important to have a thorough understanding of all of those particular things so that when we release it to you, we can feel confident that it's safe. I will stop there. Turn the floor over to Dr. Stoddard or answer questions, however you want to do it. I'm happy to accommodate you.
Thank you. Several council members do want to speak. So how about if we say for this point that any council member that wants to speak will go through the list, keep everything to 5 minutes, and then we'll come back if we have time afterwards. So the first person that wants to speak is Councilmember Albernaz.
Thank you, Mr. President. So my questions are specific to Dr. Gales, and you covered a lot of what I was going to ask in your very comprehensive presentation, Dr. Gales, so thank you for that. And thank you again for your and your team's leadership and hard work through the pandemic. I wanted to pivot slightly because it's related, but to talk about flu shots. It's always important to get a flu shot, but in particular this year, if you could just spend a couple of minutes talking about why it's particularly important for residents to receive their flu shot this year and allay any concerns that people may have regarding the validity of those flu shots because of everything they're hearing in the news.
Sure, that's an excellent point. So get your flu shot. You don't have to wait for October. You can get it now. I got mine yesterday. In fact, and my parents, who've not always been the greatest adherents in terms of getting flu shots, they got theirs last week. It's doubly important because we know, separate from COVID, that flu can potentially significantly impact large swaths of our population, and again can cause severe illness in those who have different health conditions, comorbid conditions, or in our older populations. And given that we're also dealing with COVID in this time, you want to have as much protection and have that on board as much as possible. The challenge moving forward is that if you think back to some of my comments earlier when talking about COVID-like illnesses, well, many of the symptoms that we talk about with COVID-19 are also symptoms of the flu, and it's very difficult to distinguish between the two. And so particularly for those who are vulnerable, at risk, and have comorbidities that could predispose them to more severe forms of illness, it's important to get the flu vaccine to provide as much coverage and protection from the flu so that you're not potentially hit with both the flu and COVID-19. And so we would continue to emphasize that message as we do every year in terms of mitigating the impact of the flu in general. But given that we're in the time of a very similar illness in terms of COVID-19, we want to make sure that as many people are protected as possible to prevent the impact of both at the same time.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I'm getting my flu shot this week. So it's important for everyone. I just had more of a comment, and I appreciate several months ago, the governor gave local jurisdictions with higher caseloads the ability to make their own decisions, which I believe was wise. But that, of course, has inevitably led to some confusion and frustration that we keep hearing about, we've discussed many times before. And I think it would be helpful, and maybe not right now, but moving forward, to clearly articulate exactly what the state's role and what the county's role is, where it crosses over, who's responsible for what, because I think that has led to additional confusion and frustration, and the perceived conflict that exists sometimes between the timing of when an announcement is made and when we get that information compounds the problem. And so I've heard both of you, Dr. Stoddard and Dr. Gales, individually speak to various groups and explain very well where those lines are and who is responsible for what. But I think an illustration on our COVID page that more clearly articulates who the decision makers are, when they make those decisions. And I know it's sometimes gray, but I think would be helpful. And I also think it would be important to further underscore the collaboration between neighboring jurisdictions, not just within the state, and reinforce why and how those conversations are continuing to happen and how they weigh into our decisions here on a local level. People are just so hungry for information right now and want more clarity on where the goalposts are so that they can begin to plan their operations, acknowledging it's a moving target and it's hard to give them those goalposts. But I think just further providing that context may allay at least some of that frustration that we're seeing in the community. And my final comment is with regards to what we're seeing with schools that have moved forward with their opening plans. This does provide some lessons learned for the county as a whole. When at some point our entire school system, we hope, will open and obviously safely. And so, again, may not be the appropriate time now, but if you could describe some of those lessons learned that we are figuring out in real time right now that may be helpful for others to learn from. And I just want to allay any concerns that are out there. Our county wants to work with you. This is not a gotcha situation. We are all partners in ensuring that our entire community remains safe. And there may be some disagreements, but there is no disagreement on our concern about maintaining the safety of everybody, especially those schools that have moved forward, because we want to see everyone succeed. So just wanted to make those final comments based on a lot of feedback we're getting in the community. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
Well, thank you very much. And I'll pick up where Councilmember Albornoz just left off, because I think it is important for us to understand at the very beginning, when we had this conversation about the safety of opening up schools, the ultimate tantamount concern was the safety of all of our residents, including our students, our teachers, staff, and their families. And so from that perspective, it will be incredibly important for us to understand where some of the challenges have been in terms of maybe not adhering to the processes that they set in place, maybe not having the right processes set in place to begin with, so that we can learn from them, not only to help to educate us as we look to eventually reopen our schools, but also to continue to ensure the safety of those schools who choose to move forward with opening. And so from that perspective, I know Dr. Gales, you've been working hand in hand with them, as well as Dr. Stoddard, in trying to ensure that those recommendations are adhered to and that they are primarily done in the interest of the safety of all of our community. But Dr. Gales, I want to go past that and go into what you had talked about before in terms of our transmission rates. Understanding that the state has moved into phase 3, and we know that we are not in a bubble here in Montgomery County, and some of our neighboring jurisdictions have embraced that, moving into phase 3 methodology. And we've seen the increases we've seen. What are your concerns? What are your recommendations for those who want to continue to keep themselves safe? How do folks continue to minimize their exposure? Can we just remind folks, because I think oftentimes, unfortunately, as time progresses, folks forget, folks get a little bit more lax in terms of what it is that they need to do to keep themselves safe. So if you can talk to the general populace about what it is we need to do to continue to be vigilant, and then I've got another question for you after that.
Okay. Well, I'll try to be brief and succinct. So the first thing, to back to Councilmember Albanoz's point, we are working actually on simplifying our dashboard to be able to release something at home, taking the feedback we've heard from you all and others to give a clear indication of goalposts. Here's what we need to move forward. Here's what would happen if we need to move backwards. Because I think those are both conversations that we need to have in the event that the numbers move to a point where we don't see improvement and we actually have to talk about walking back. But certainly also, distilling it to a point where folks can see in a more simplistic way to understand what criteria need to be met to move forward to another phase. Now, as it relates to what we need to watch for, I think that the big challenge, and this informs the conversations about schools, it informs the conversations about new phases, is all of this has to be done in the setting of lower community transmission. And if we don't see lower community transmission, we can have lots of provisions in place. But for example, in schools, you can have lots of safety plans in place, but if folks after hours are going back to places where community transmission is higher, it's increasing the likelihood that they're bringing it into the school or their job or their restaurant or all of those places. And so that's what we have to continue to focus on, is driving that number down. It makes it increasingly challenging to do so, to your point, Councilmember Rice, when there are increased provisions across other places, and we know people cross boundaries. So the things that we have to remember to do is remember to adhere to the guidelines. For example, we continue to see family gatherings tied to contact tracing. Now, the challenge is we all want to see our family. When we see our family, we want to hug. We want to be close because it's our family and we trust them. But we can't let down our guard when we're in those settings. We, particularly if we are interacting with folks outside of our household, you've got to wear your face coverings. You've got to continue to wash your hands and put physical distancing in place, because even if there are family members or people we know and trust, we can still transmit the virus between one another. And so I think we have to remember to remain vigilant on those perspectives. I know it's been a long process and we still have a ways to go, but we can't forget those practices that have been put into place to keep us safe.
Thank you for being succinct, because I thought of another question that I want to throw in there in the mix. I know that I think it was either Alexandria or Arlington actually enacted a mask ordinance mandating that masks be worn outside as well as indoors. I'm curious as to your thoughts on that. And I'll just say, this weekend I was out at Mattapique, the fishing pier there off of the Chesapeake Bay. Was on that fishing pier with a lot of people, trying to do my social distancing, but I wore my mask the entire time. And it's interesting because I would say about 95% of the people didn't. Is there a thought around having a mask instituted for outdoors?
So we do. So I guess we do have the mandate in place, and the language says, when physical distancing is not possible. We've not taken the step to just mandate it, period. And that's something that we can continue to discuss, particularly in the setting of increased cases and increased evidence where there's concern for lack of adherence.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know I'm at my 5 minutes.
Thank you. And if we have time, we'll come back. But to be
Please
fair,
put me on the list. I've got one more that's really important.
Okay,
Thank
all
you.
right, you're back on the list. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Dr. Gales, Dr. Stoddard, for the update. And obviously, we have to be vigilant. I will say to Councilmember Albanaz, I am also scheduled for a flu shot on Wednesday, first thing. So hopefully we all can do that. I will be putting out notice to residents just as a way to encourage other people to do it as well. So glad that you mentioned that, Councilmember Albanaz. And thank you, Dr. Gales, for mentioning the dashboard and the interest in streamlining it, making that even easier. As you know, I've been pushed for that originally. I think it has really helped. I think improving it will help even further to just be clear and consistent on what the metrics are so that everybody can point to the same place. So I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you highlighting the R0 numbers and the commitment to keep those updated on a regular basis. I think that's a really good shorthand for residents, albeit not perfect. It doesn't cover everything, as you have frequently told us, but it does give a shorthand to what the direction of the virus in terms of its transmission is going. I think it's really helpful for residents to be able to see that very easily and quickly. So thank you for that. Just a few questions, a number of issues I know you've been working on. I just wanted to get an update. One is related to religious institutions with the high holidays coming up. Dr. Stoddard, you and I have had significant conversations, and Dr. Gales, Dr. Stoddard, and all of us have spoken about this. I know there's an interest in trying to balance the public health concerns with community spread, with the unique needs of communities to be able to observe their faith, particularly at this important time of year. Just wanted to get a quick update of where that stands.
Sure. I think Dr. Stoddard will talk more about it. We actually talked yesterday, and I know that he and his team have been working to design some strategies to be able to do exactly what you said. So I won't step in if he wants to share it now or later. So.
Yeah, so we had a meeting with the larger faith community. Reverend Caseman and Ken Hartman helped organize that meeting. We talked with Dr. Gales and I about how we can, think about accommodations for increased capacity for houses of worship. We know the High Holy Days are approaching for many of the faith traditions. We are going to have a sit down where we specifically look at the guidelines beginning tomorrow. We've tried to increase the representation on the faith community work group that allows us to make sure that we're addressing more faith traditions. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to find some additional accommodations where we can increase capacity, but offset those increased capacities with some other strategies that allow for things that we're particularly concerned about. And so when we talk about our houses of worship, obviously the capacity is very large in terms of what they're permitted to operate inside spaces normally. And there are bottlenecks usually at the entries and exit ways. So if we can make those bottlenecks safer, we feel better about maybe some increased capacity in the houses in the sanctuary space or worship space itself. And so I think we're going to work with the faith community to have something that's multi-denominational in its considerations. And the hope is that we can do that relatively quickly to allow. I know Rosh Hashanah is on Saturday, begins on Saturday. Obviously, this is an interesting or challenging juxtaposition because we're seeing what's happening in Israel as well, where they're actually instituting new lockdowns on Friday, and so it's a challenging thing for particularly for the Jewish faith tradition right now, given the what's going on in Israel. Their holidays are starting very soon, and so we're going to work as quickly as we can to find some additional accommodations while trying to. Obviously, the big point is. In the context of increasing cases, which I think Dr. Gales has laid out already, we want to make sure that we're not introducing additional risk to our community and to those who are going to worship.
Appreciate that. Then just a quick update on outdoor and indoor performances. County executive had sent a letter requesting up to 50. The governor has now allowed indoor for 150 for performances, outdoor up to 250, I believe. I know you all were working on figuring out what that was going to look like. I'd like to get an update on that. And I'm just going to go through. I have two others, and I'll let you just go through and give the update on all of them if that's okay. The other's on the 10 p.m. rule for restaurants. Thank you, Dr. Stoddard, for participating yesterday in a really helpful discussion. There is definite buy-in from the businesses to try to work out any public health accommodations and to come up with a regulatory regime that can protect customers and workers, but also keep them in business. So I just want to get an update on timing there. And then lastly, the mask policy for sports related to heavy exertion with the American Academy of Pediatrics determination and any changes that may be coming up the pipeline for that related to soccer and others.
I can go
ahead. We've talked about it, but Earl's been on it, so I defer to him to speak, provide those.
Yeah, I'll probably. I mean, Dr. Yale can certainly add in. Obviously, his voice in this is paramount. So in the live performances issue, we spoke with the team that does review the letters of approval, and what we've done essentially is we've developed a strategy that I believe will allow live performances outdoors to move forward, like as in very soon, as in likely this week. We'll be issuing that. We've developed guidelines, talked to Dr. Gales about those, and he's comfortable with the strategy, as comfortable as we can be in the setting of the community transmission where it is right now. And we're likely going to move forward with those this week. I just need to get them written into something that's actually presentable to the community. Indoor live performances, obviously. As part of my briefing, and I'll just say it now, the indoor spaces are continue to be incredibly concerning to us. Over the last 3 weeks, there's been at least a half dozen publications on the increased risk of indoor spaces as it relates to HVAC systems and their ability to recirculate virus indoors. And so, as we've talked about all along, we're very moved by the science on COVID-19. And so what we'd like to do is allow, I know we've only got probably at most 8 to 10 weeks of good outdoor weather that allow outdoor performances to continue at most. And so we'd like to get those in place first while we still continue to look at the indoor spaces. I know we've also have plans to sit down with some of the movie theater representatives to discuss that as well. I think it's just we're trying to figure out how do we balance the risk that is becoming increasingly evident about indoor spaces with increased use of indoor spaces. And obviously this is something that's going to become increasingly important as we get closer to the fall and winter months. And, you know, I think we're trying to balance all those things out. So we're going to likely start with outdoor live performances very soon, but as in very soon this week. But I think that the indoor ones are going to take a little bit longer because of the increased concern that we're seeing from the science. And then lastly, as you mentioned, we did have a meeting with the restaurant community yesterday to try and think about the 10 p.m. alcohol sales limitation, extending that potentially to midnight. What we're considering, and we have to write this up because I think the words actually matter in terms of the details here. I did discuss with Dr. Gales, and he wants to see the full write-up before we proceed with it. But essentially, the concept is an opt-in program that would allow businesses to go from 10 p.m. to midnight with certain stipulations that they agree to, and they would have to provide staffing to whose specific job it was to enforce those rules during their operations. And then what would happen is if we do our county secondary enforcement, we'd have a list of businesses who have agreed to opt in. And if we went to those businesses and found them to be in violation of the things that they had committed to, we would rescind their approval and instead of just issuing a citation of $500, which for many businesses is frankly would be a cost of doing business if it were allowed. In this case, we would actually just remove their approval to do additional alcohol sales, which have a much more significant way of enforcement for us. And so we're going to work that. We're going to draw those details up. The team has already been meeting this morning since our meeting yesterday to start writing those things up. I'm hopeful that we'll have a draft of that this week as well for our review and approval.
Thank you. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for this update. I really appreciate the conversation about the flu shot. It was on my list of things to ask about since people are trying to make those decisions. I have my appointment on Thursday, but I think it is important to discuss why it is such a critical issue this year in particular. It is every year, but it's very important. Just a couple of things. So I'm already hearing from folks who are wondering about Halloween. And just curious, is there been any conversations about just, general directive or messages to the community regarding Halloween?
So we've had some informal conversations about it. To be perfectly candid, we've kind of put it in the queue to get through the schools and the uptick. But it is on our radar, and we are aware that there are some other jurisdictions, including Los Angeles, who have put out some information related to it. And we've been keeping an eye out on them in other places. So be on the lookout for some language probably within the next week or so. And again, a large portion of it is dependent upon, community transmission and where we sit. Based upon where we are right now, it would not be recommended, in terms of that or having more controlled focus events that don't have people going from house to house, again, increasing points of contact and potential transmission. So yeah, it's on our radar.
Yeah, I will only add that Clark from Public Health did actually take a look at the LA County guidelines, and I think that's something that we're likely to parallel. And I think Dr. Yells' correctly assessment, it's going to be one of those things where it's going to be one of those activities where person-to-person exchange is not going to be recommended. But frankly, given we know this is a community activity, it will likely be a list of recommendations that will say essentially, we're not recommending that you do this, but if you do this, we're definitely recommending that A, B, and C be followed, kind of, because obviously it's not a government or business owned activity that is trick-or-treating. So
absolutely. I appreciate the response to Councilmember Friedsen's comment and question regarding religious accommodations. Obviously, in my district, with a very large Jewish community, there is, interest in figuring out some kind of accommodation and compromise with the high holidays coming up. So I appreciate that response. And then lastly, I know I sent a memo with a screenshot of the intake form that was being used at the Wheaton testing site. And the translation in Spanish was just really subpar. And so I just want to make sure that, again, specifically because the questions that were translated in such a bizarre way are very critical to the information that we're trying to gather from these, residents who are going there to get tested. And that critical information informs, I think, a lot of our own, health data, composites, so that we can figure out what's going on, right? So things like, do you live in congregated spaces? I think was one of the questions. Or have you been hospitalized, with symptoms? So we really need to have that kind of information. And when the translation is just so strange, then we miss out on that. And so to the extent that, we can prioritize having someone who does that quality control, that would be really important as we seek to understand what is happening in some of our communities. I think that is paramount. So really wanted to bring that up again, because I know we've had this conversation a lot, and I know it's not up to you guys, but we do have and have invested in a lot of resources. And so was just curious as to, why this keeps happening. So just wanted to flag that again and hope that we can fix that ASAP so that the information we're gathering is accurate. That would be super important. And again, thank you for everything you continue to do. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilmember Glass.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, my colleagues, for all the good questions. I'm just going to follow up on a few of them. Regarding the culture and entertainment opportunities that we've been talking about, and my colleagues have been talking about. Don't mind the helicopter overhead if you hear that. There's an interesting parallel between some of the religious institutions that actually operate in theaters, and then banning theaters from operating as cultural institutions, not religious institutions. And there are a number of those that operate here in Montgomery County as religious institutions. And so a number of theaters, particularly AFI in downtown Silver Spring, had reached out to me and asked if there could be some accommodation. And I have a number of other cultural and artistic organizations that have asked me about plans for this fall and this winter, quite frankly, with Nutcracker season upon us and other performances. And so I just want to drill down a little bit, because I think, Dr. Stoddard, you alluded to creating some regulations regarding outdoor entertainment opportunities. And as these organizations are planning, not beginning to plan, but as they are planning for their performances, can you enlighten us a little bit more about what those regulations might entail?
Yeah, so they're going to essentially focus on. Actually, I don't think I'm ready to show a draft, but I can certainly talk about one. So they're going to focus on the 50-person gathering limit, but what we have done is essentially you'll seek a letter of approval for your performance, and as part of that, you can request that your performers be considered as separate from that 50, so long as you set in place physical and process barriers that prevent the attendees and staff who work with the attendees from intermixing with their performance. So if you treat them as two different pools of people, you can address them, 50 for your audience and separate. Because I know that the cast and crews for some of these performances can be quite large themselves, and therefore, if you were limited to 50 total, it would be impossible to do an event where you'd have more people working at the event than they would actually attending it. And so, obviously, I think that that's how we've worked it. The other things that we've suggested is, number one, it not be walk up. You have to have tickets in advance, and that way, as part of the ticketing process, you would actually collect information from the person who's purchasing tickets that would allow for any contact tracing to occur from that individual. In addition, face coverings at all times for guests and theater staff interacting with guests, as well as performers when they're not doing the actual direct performance per se. And then finally, a few things where you have a performer before the run of show, you have a performer be tested before they do the run of show, and a temperature check for staff and performers before an individual performance. I think that summarizes most of the things on this list that I'm looking at here, and then sanitation and other sort of requirements. Those are essentially basically going to be the guidelines that are going to be provided for the outdoor performance.
Thank you for sharing that. I know some artistic leaders are listening right now. So while the regs aren't finalized and they're not public, that level of insight right now is helpful. And then, I think a question that Councilmember Rice had asked before, I just want to drill down a little deeper. Now that the state has gone to phase 3, and I know that both you and Dr. Gales, Dr. Starter and Dr. Gales, are in conversation with your peers and colleagues throughout the state. What are you learning from them and their experiences as they've moved to stage 3 and while we have not?
I think the best way to put it is this way. Any of those of us who are in health recognize that moving towards a phase, increasing reopening where the burden of virus remains where it is going to produce new cases. And that's the reality that we're living in. And so we have been spending time trying to come up with strategies, anticipating that there are likely more cases to happen, as we have seen in our jurisdiction and we're seeing across the state and other places, how we deal with that, and making sure that we have the resources in place to deal with any potential increase in those particular cases. And I see the 5-minute rule, but I'll just say, we are nervous because we know that we've not achieved a lower level of community transmission. And by increasing the opportunity for activities to be open, we're nervous that could set us up for a potential significant increase in new cases across the state, even in the setting of lower hospitalizations or things like that.
I'll just add briefly, I know you're over time, but I think it's really important to say, I think that intrinsically when people see things opening up, they assume they're safe. And I don't think you should make that assumption about things that are opening up in all cases. And so it's incredibly important that you make personal decisions about your own health and safety and not necessarily always rely specifically on what's allowed to be done just as a guide for what is safe for you to do. And I think that's an incredibly important piece to continue to remember.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Gales, before I call on Councilmember Reamer, Councilmember Navarro had asked a question about the intake form issue in the Spanish language. Can you answer that? Do we need someone else? Do you need to get back to someone else to answer that? Where are we on that one?
So we were made aware of it. I know it's being actively addressed. It was discussed this morning in other conversations, and it's getting fixed as soon as possible because we share your concern. It's not okay. And I know that behind the scenes it's getting addressed to fix it as quickly as it can and be brought online, but also to address any type of systemic issues or process issues that led to it happening in the first place. So both short-term and long-term issues are being actively addressed as we speak.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And if somebody, and so I guess I'll wait to see the response to my office. I really do appreciate the attention paid to it. Thank you.
And if you could let all of us know, but especially Councilmember Navarro, please. Thank you. Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you. So I want to follow up a bit on the comments from Councilmember Rice talking about schools. He and I have been talking about this issue a bit more. It's very concerning. The status quo path that we're on, I think we all have to ask ourselves if the level of viral transmission that we have today supports reopening MCPS. And if it doesn't, what are we going to do to change that? And I think we're all hoping that the steps that we've taken along the way would have more effect than they are having. But hope is not a plan. And right now, the schools are going to, the theoretical reopening of schools is late January. But what is going to change between now and then that's going to support driving the viral transmission numbers downward? What are we going to say in January? Are we implicitly saying that we think the schools could reopen under the current level of transmission? Or are we saying that it needs to be lower? We've got to start thinking about this more, because January is right around the corner. It's going to be here. And I think we could all, I would hope we could all agree, I know Councilmember Rice certainly does as well, that if there's one thing we've got to do, it's help our kids get back to school. And the possibility that we'll be here, absent something that could happen, which is that in the winter, there's just a huge explosion of transmission. That's a possibility. But, if you assume it's the status quo, I don't know what the right assumption is. What are we going to do? Because it isn't the level that Dr. Gale said, moderate to low. And I point out, as I have in the past, that New York has lower transmission than we do. Their transmission is less than half ours. And even they're having trouble. I mean, the school system in the city wants to reopen. They've had to postpone that reopening. It's not even easy at that level. So I just think, we have got to figure out what path we're on. I am concerned. I'm comforted a bit by Dr. Stoddard. You said that each performance will need its own plan. That is, certainly there could be more controls in that. But I really am worried that we're on this path of gradual reopening. We're painting ourselves into a corner. And then we're going to have to decide, what do we do? Do we either send our kids back to school with the virus at its level, or do we just keep them home for the rest of the year? And that's a really difficult position for us to be in. So first of all, we need to talk about it more. Councilmember Rice and I have been talking about having some joint conversations with the board and the school system and the teachers. We need to really get honest here and be transparent with ourselves so that we can make a tough decision, whatever that might be. And I repeat, I wish I knew what, I'm sure Dr. Gale's wishes, but what would it take for us to get to the New York level? I think that's a question we have to really start asking. I heard Dr. Gale say last week that they're beginning to prepare contingency plans for what happens if the viral transmission rises, which is possible. So, Dr. Gales, I'll just turn it to you if you'd like to make any comments about reopening schools, or Dr. Stoddard, the path that we're on, what do we need to know as we look down the road here in the next couple months?
I'll do this really quickly. I know that actually Councilmember Friesen had one of his questions not answered, and I know it's something that you've also brought up, Councilmember Reamer, related to soccer and mask. We are actually updating the guidance around that, and we'll be putting forward that information with the updated AAP recommendations around that. So stay tuned. That is coming, and it will be coming sooner than later. I know we had a conversation around timelines before, so stay tuned. It's coming. And we actually talked about it this morning. And so as it relates to schools reopening, so this is the challenge, and it gets to some of the, the performances and things like that. We've got to drive numbers down to lower level to be able to have lower community transmission, to be able to do things. And we fully recognize and are empathetic to the economic realities, the socio-emotional realities of reopening, things like that. But we also are guided by the health principles and recognize and understand the more we open up with higher levels of community transmission, the more we talk about painting ourselves into a corner, we're going to potentially be slammed by more cases due to that precarious balance and how we do that. Now, as it relates schools, I know that MCPS is working on coming up with plans and strategies to be able to bring back some students who to their school settings before January, and I know that they also are going to look at the information and where we stand at the end of the first quarter to be able to make some other decisions around the totality of the entire school system and the ability to come back. Where we stand right now in terms of the numbers that were put forward by the state guidelines, there are some conversations in terms of that will qualify for hybrid conditions. The challenge is again, to drive down community transmission, we're going to probably have to have some more hard conversations about implementing public health strategies that may run counter to some of those economic conversations and those kind of things in terms of reopening. And so you referenced the state of New York. They're having some challenges in terms of reopening, dealing with unions and things like that. But the reason why New York and some of those other states in that area have been able to drive down their transmission is they kept things closed. And they kept things closed for a longer period of time that did not increase those activities. For example, they just reopened indoor restaurants at 25% capacity. So their phased-in approach in terms of reopening was much slower than many other states. And I think the second component of that influenced why numbers in New York have been driven down and have been able to be sustained is the public buy-in in terms of the effects of COVID-19. New York was slammed hard. The whole world watched New York's cases and what happened. And I will say this based upon, I get, fortunately, I do get some nice emails through the day saying we're doing a good job, keep up the good work. We also get a lot of emails saying we're not that smart and we're not doing the right things and we need to move and open up things quickly. Part of that, I think, is influenced by we have not seen the level of severity, or at least some in our community have not seen the level of severity and impact of COVID-19 for it to really resonate and understand why we have restrictions in place. And I think that's going to be an ongoing challenge. Even now we have people say, well, the cases are up, but people aren't going to the hospital. No one's dying, so why not just open things up? Again, and we've had this conversation before, and to your point about status quo, I refuse to accept that as our status quo. And I refuse to accept that the best that we can do is having 80 to 90 cases a day. And we've got to continue to, look through how we can come up with policies and implement strategies and make sure people are following the restrictions to be able to drive that down. And that may, in fact, if the numbers go up, may introduce the possibility that we have to roll back provisions. And so that's why we're working to be, and certainly, we'll make sure that you all see that and a part of that conversation for your input. But we have to come up with a structure that lays out criteria to say to the general public, if we get to these points, we have to go back because we've got to drive the numbers down even more to get to that point. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
I know I've taken my time. I just want to close by saying, the council has not criticized the closings. I think we would support continued closing if necessary, but rapid testing may be the solution. We need to be planning for wide deployment of rapid testing. That may be the solution.
And we are. Thank you. And I do believe it should be noted, and we have talked about this before, but if wishes could solve this, we would have solved this a long time ago. This is obviously extremely serious business. We don't want to put anyone at risk, especially our children and the people that educate our children and every other person in Montgomery County and our loved ones. And we have to do this in a systematic and a proper way. Having said that, we also need to keep in mind that our businesses and everyone else are hurting and hemorrhaging in so many ways. So we have to figure out a way which is the best path forward. But we just can't say this is what we want. We have to figure out what we need. And with that, Councilmember Joando.
Thank you, Mr. President. Agree with your statement. Thank you, Dr. Gales, Dr. Stoddard, for all your work. Always start there because it's hard and it's important and it's not easy. This is a balancing act. We're trying to balance many, many factors. And I understand the inherent contradiction in these conversations that you're having with us and with the public about how do we keep everyone's safe, but also how do we open? How do we stretch this timeline? How do we get these things open? I understand that, and I think we all understand that. It's because we're dealing with an unprecedented pandemic. Following up on a couple of points that have been made, just so people know, I think sometimes people don't know exactly what's happening. What is the state guideline for hybrid reopening of in-person learning?
There is no clear definition of what qualifies as hybrid education. We've asked for that clarification and guidance, and we've not received any. And so as it stands, it is hybrid reopening or hybrid guidelines is what it is. There's no, and even in the state guidelines that have been produced, there's no further definition of what constitutes and qualifies as hybrid education learning modules from the state's perspective.
Okay. I hadn't been able to find it either. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't looking in the wrong place.
Nope.
As far as Councilmember Reamer's line of questioning, we all want to do what we can to make sure we can reopen safely as quickly as possible, right? And if that means we have to shut things down, you've mentioned several times, what do we have to do to get our numbers past this stubborn level of, slight increase that we've seen? I think we want to know the sooner we do that, the better. What we don't want is a drip and drab, and then we're hit with the flu season, and if things get worse, people are falling. I see it every day. People are falling into this false security of things being opened, and it's human nature. You see things gradually happening. You think the next step is going to happen, and people are getting more lax with face coverings and the like. And so I just really want to press that point of, in your opinion, and you both can answer this, do we need to right now start rolling things back so that we can avoid that type of slight increase that could lead to further increase down the road?
Well, I think we're actively, we're continuing to look at the contact tracing data. And, for example, when we saw contact tracing showing that it was affiliated or we saw a high number of cases associated with alcohol consumption in restaurants, we took that action. And so we're trying to be very intentional about what the data shows us in terms of being able to curb actions that are being shown to be tied to it. It's something that, we're actively thinking about, because no one wants to see happen what you just described. And particularly the challenge is, again, going back to one of the earlier comments, is it's challenging when other areas across the state have provisions that do allow those opportunities. And we know people move back and forth the boundaries. I'll give an example. I know one county, there was a group who wanted to have an event. They had caps on their social gatherings, so they took their event and went to another jurisdiction. And that particular event had, I think, over 2,000 people participating. So you can see how the state guidance, and not agreeing with that makes it harder. But I will say, we continue to be dedicated looking at those things, and we'll have no issues. I know it will cause concern and potential controversy if we need to do that. But if, the recommendations from the health perspective will be to not blink if we need to do those, particularly if there are activities that we're finding are time and time again associated with an increase in cases.
I appreciate that. Go ahead, Dr.
I would only add, one of the benefits that New York State certainly had is it had the state of New Jersey and the state of Connecticut also working with it pretty closely to all drive their numbers down concurrently. The challenge ultimately becomes, and this is the yin and yang, the balance of the challenges that we face. We could close everything down in Montgomery County, but because Frederick County is largely open, there's more things open in Prince George's, Northern Virginia, we couldn't guarantee if we closed everything down that our numbers would plummet in the way that we would hope that they would. And so we are now, they would certainly go down. That's pretty clear. How low they would go and where, would they go to a level that we all feel comfortable opening schools? I don't know that we know the answer to that. But the choice then becomes, do we do that and, have greater economic impact disproportionately to our businesses and all the long-term ramifications there. And so it makes it a lot harder when you're trying to do it by yourself. And this is like when we were closing things down in the beginning, we said the same thing. We tried to build regional constructs for closing things down because they're way less effective to close them down by yourself than they are in the concept, in the context of doing it as a unit, as a region, as a state, all those things. And so there is clearly no appetite at the state to close things down again. And that's the challenge that we're going to face, is that we would have to go it alone, and that's the problem.
Yeah. Well, I think that's very troubling, in that I understand it, and it's not your doing, but the fact that you're saying that even if we went to, and I'm paraphrasing, if we closed everything down, we wouldn't be able to see the movement on the numbers because of what's happening elsewhere in the state. That speaks to me that we need to talk to county executive and us and others, to the regional partners, and try to do what we can, because what you just said makes me think we're going to continue on where we're at with drip and drab.
We would see movement if we made individual level changes in Montgomery County. I don't want to say that we wouldn't, but we would not see the full impacts of what we were seeing in New York State, because we would be doing it as a much smaller unit surrounded by units that are not doing it. And so, yeah.
I appreciate it. My time is up, but thank you for the work you're doing. We'll continue to stand with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President Hucker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you both for everything you're doing. I appreciate the creative, targeted proposal regarding restaurants and the 10 p.m. rule that came up yesterday, so I look forward to the resolution of that. I followed Dr. Gale's advice in advance. I got my flu shot last week. I'm wondering if there are any plans, or whether we should make any plans for something that's been speculated about a little bit in the community, setting up outdoor flu shot pop-up clinics.
So to that end, and actually I would encourage you all, since you all have such a great reach within the community, when you do get your flu shots, put that on social media and get that out. It's important to show folks that you're doing it, and to encourage them to do so. So the team, we have an allocation of flu vaccine that we received from the state. And one of the things, the team is actually meeting at 11 o'clock. So they're meeting right now to talk about how to utilize some of those spaces to do public testing, for example, food distribution sites, and the current test sites that we have, for asymptomatic individuals to particularly get the vaccine. So we're actively working on those strategies, and hope to be able to announce some things very soon.
Great. If you do go in that direction, I'd be happy to help organize and find locations and publicize them in my area. Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Thank you. And what we're going to do now is ask Dr. Stoddard. He's given some of his thoughts, but we're going to ask Dr. Stoddard. And then I have already on the list Councilmember Albornoz and Councilmember Rice, and that's how we're progressing. Dr. Stoddard, please.
I've covered many of my comments already in answering some questions, so that I'll keep my comments brief. I want to highlight a couple things. So actually today is September 15th. So today marks the day that FEMA actually has changed its policy around PPE, meaning that they're no longer going to cover PPE for things outside of what they call emergency protective measures, meaning the PPE that's utilized by first responders, hospital workers, and potentially some others, like maybe in a correctional settings. But what they're not specifically going to cover is face coverings in schools and other places where it's largely preventive in nature. And so fortunately, that policy only prospectively impacts the use of the purchase of PPE. And the county has been able to procure a significant amount of personal protective equipment that we will be processing through FEMA's request. We currently sit at 3.7 million N95 masks, 3.5 million surgical masks, over 110,000 face coverings or cloth face coverings. And so we've been able to secure we'll be in a significantly different place if there is a resurgence for COVID-19 in terms of PPE for the fall than we were in the spring, which I think is good news for everyone. We continue to look at the science, and I alluded to this some already with the indoor spaces. There was also a study that showed that buses can be a problem if you operate on the recirculator mode of your HVAC system in a bus. We've already worked with DOT that we do not do recirculation mode in our current buses. We take fresh air in from the outside, which obviously is a much less problematic situation. In addition, the science that we also continue to look at is the science around some of the potential long-term impacts for COVID-19. And there are a series of them that have been identified, and what's not clear is how frequent they really are and whether they are truly long-term, in the sense that, COVID-19 has been a human disease for less than a year at this point. And so we do not know if some of these, circulatory or heart-based illness side effects, or the neurologic impacts that have been seen or observed over the last couple months are long-term. But that's the science we continue to look at, and continues to spell out that we are still in a pandemic with a novel illness. We think we know a fair bit about this illness. We know far less about COVID-19 than we know about many things that we deal with all the time. And so I think it's still important to remember that there are those long-term challenges that we are concerned about. Phase 2 of our eviction prevention program with HHS and Department of Housing and Community Affairs launched last week. This will be a metrics-based targeted approach. We're actually attempting to predictably identify communities where eviction is more likely based on a series of data from a long period of time. And I think one thing that's really important that we understand is that, evictions get a lot of the attention, but typically where we see people losing housing is actually in the holdover or change of occupancy rate, much more than we see the actual formal legal eviction process playing out. People are typically pressured into moving long before their case is finalized in the court. And so we're obviously paying attention to the holdover rate and trying to understand what that means for long-term housing sustainability and suitability as it relates to COVID-19. And so we continue to do that work. One last thing I do want to talk about is elections. We are working to have a safe and effective, timely, both in-person and mail-in election process. We still encourage people to request their ballots via mail and to fill them out and submit them either via mail, U.S. Postal, or Dropbox that are available. Those people who do want to vote in person, we are going to make those voting sites as safe as we possibly can. We do continue to have a backlog of mail-in ballot applications. We peaked at about 95,000 last week. We're down to about a 75,000 backlog. We've been working with our existing Board of Elections staff as well as recreation staff that we've moved over to the Board of Elections temporarily to support the processing of those applications. They worked through the weekend. They did more than 22,000 ballot applications over the weekend, another 7,000 yesterday. So we've got that backlog coming down. The state will be opening up the processing center early next week to help with the processing of those ballots as well. And so obviously our goal is to have those be processed as quickly as possible. And at the end of the day, have everyone be able to participate in a safe and effective election come November. And so with that, I think that's all I had, and happy to entertain any additional questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Albornoz.
Thank you, Mr. President. So nothing like dealing with record-setting floods in the midst of a pandemic. So Dr. Stoddard, I want to thank you, the emergency management team, and all of our first responders, and Maryland National Capital Park and Planning, who did an outstanding job through all of that. But it does raise a question, and that's capacity. You mentioned the election coming up. Dr. Navarro, Councilmember Navarro brought up the issue of quality control with the questionnaire. And as we know, it's so critical for particularly our immigrant community to have a positive experience when accessing government services in this time of, there being distrust of government. And I've asked this question before, and I mean it sincerely. A story has not really been told about how hard county employees are engaging. You mentioned the Department of Recreation, shifting. They've also helped with, food delivery to seniors, helping at homeless shelters. I mean, everybody. It's been all hands on deck for quite some time now. And I am worried that as we go into the fall season, as we go into the winter, God forbid there's another surge. Do both of you have confidence that we have the staff capacity and infrastructure in place to address any potential outbreaks, coupled with other challenges that we're facing on a parallel track? And if not, is there an opportunity? There are 150,000 county residents that have filed for unemployment. that are looking for work, that need something to turn to? Are there opportunities in the short term? Do we need opportunities to shore up some of that infrastructure to address some of these and other potential issues moving forward?
I would say it's definitely a challenge. I mean, there's no question about it. And I would point to both the county employees, but also our nonprofit partners and frankly, private sector. I think everyone's feeling the stress of this long-term pandemic. I won't go too far down the rabbit hole of mental health, but obviously it's incredibly important, and the stress that people are feeling right now, whether you're working on the pandemic or not, is incredible. I do have significant concerns about, with flooding. I said to someone, after the floods are over, like, this climate change is not going away. I mean, it's still a threat that it's posed to Montgomery County, and it's an increasing threat, and one that we have not been able to dedicate the time that I would like to have dedicated over the last 6 months to addressing. And so I think there's absolutely things that are not going to be as fully addressed as we would like them to be in light of COVID-19. That said, I mean, the challenges that we face are the pressures, the challenge that we really in expanding personnel isn't the total number of people necessarily, it's often skill set. And that's the trouble. It's like the same people who are asking to develop guidelines for how we safely can open a business are the same people who would be doing plan review for tools, or who would be, it's the same skill set expertise that you have to draw upon. And so, the folks in public health are being asked to do incredible efforts. And frankly, the people who, even within county government, don't have the same skill set are, like you said, rec staff have stepped up considerably. So I think, and we've been trying to look for opportunities to bring up the question of stress management and mental health, and, making sure that those who are working within the system continue to operate within the system. I think we've been able to keep morale pretty high. I do think it is incredibly important that we continue to recognize people who are working very hard, because I think that's a big part of the morale boost. We spend a lot of time talking about what isn't working well. I think that things like the food work are examples of things that are working as better than when we could have expected. So I think that's incredibly important. If we have additional staffing needs, I think we have no question that will come to council for an additional request. I think the challenge that we're facing is the places where we're really facing the bottlenecks of staffing are in skill sets that are incredibly difficult to expand right now.
I appreciate that and all those comments, Dr. Stoddard. I know it's not an easy solution or answer, but we've said this many times. We'll continue to say we stand ready to support any of your guys' efforts because we know how important all of this is. So thank you very much. I yield back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Rice.
Well, thank you very much. So one of the very important questions I have for both Dr. Gales and Dr. Stoddard involves vaccinations, and it involves the clinical trials right now and the lack of people of color, both African Americans as well as our Latinx population. And so I'm curious as to whether or not folks have reached out to localities to ask for strategies. Has there been any conversation in the health arena as well as in the emergency management arena? Because again, a vaccination that isn't effective for a large part of our population, in fact, the majority of Montgomery County, would not be something that would be effective. And so from that perspective, what's been the conversation around how to involve our people of color in these vaccination studies? And are there additional resources that are necessary? Do we need to be involved and engaged in this process? What's the game plan that we're hearing from the state as well as from the federal government, from these private corporations that are creating this, oftentimes that are within our own jurisdiction here in Montgomery County that are working on some of these vaccinations? So can you just give me an idea of what the lay of the land is when it comes to the status of vaccinations in our people of color?
Sure. So we, as you mentioned, we don't actually participate necessarily in terms of being a direct participant in the vaccine trials in terms of executing the strategies. Now, there are roles in terms of, talking it up within different communities because, NIH is in Montgomery County, and NIH is one of the leading participants in terms of conducting these trials. I will say, as a note of encouragement, yesterday, some colleagues from GW, they are one of the sites for vaccine trial. Over 50% of their participants actually are of color. So there are some promising local examples where there has been good recruitment and outreach in those communities, recognizing, and I'll find the link and I'll send it to you under separate cover. So there are some pockets that show good recruitment, and that is promising because everything you mentioned is entirely correct. We want to make sure that we do have a good representation of folk of color within those trials to understand if there are any new biological nuances or different responses in terms of the vaccine. And ultimately, when we do disseminate the vaccine, when we get one, we're going to get one, when we get one, we want people in the community to understand that they can trust it because they know that people who look like them have been a part of it and don't feel, I have family members who, historically from the flu shot have said, the flu shot's not for us. It's not for people of color, so I'm not going to trust it. I'm not going to get it. And, the scientific basis, I can't, present a study that demonstrates that. But we know historically over time, we've not been represented in those studies. So it's not difficult to understand why someone would have some reticence or hesitance to do that, participate. And quite frankly, when we do get a vaccine, we don't have time to have to deal with it. We need everybody to be on board and to feel comfortable. So I say all that to say that we will, at least from our standpoint, work to provide more information to the relevant groups who are doing the work within the community to make sure they understand if there are opportunities to participate in trials. We encourage them to do so. And certainly as we hear more stories about good representation and recruitment, we'll make them available to you all to address those concerns.
Dr. Gales, it also might be helpful for us to know which local companies are actually working on vaccinations and doing trials. And Mr. President, it may be something where us, the county council and the county executive, might want to pin a letter saying that these local companies who are residing here in this area should utilize the great wealth of diversity that we have to ensure that their trials are representative of not only the community, but also fostering the trust of that community in the efficacy of those vaccinations. And so from that perspective, maybe that's something, of course, up to my colleagues, but certainly something I'd be willing to certainly sign on to. And hopefully with some guidance from Dr. Gales, Dr. Stoddard, we can craft something that would encourage folks to do just that, especially NIH, a great partner of ours who's right here in Montgomery County. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, obviously the public partners, but there's the private partners who I know, many of whom we've met the people who are running the companies, and they certainly want to make certain that people are comfortable and that they have the fair representation. So I think that is something, Dr. Gales and Dr. Stoddard, I know you need one more thing to do, but if you could help us write that letter, we'd appreciate it. And with that, I see no other speakers. And now, Dr. Crowell was on, I believe. Are you still on, Dr. Crowell? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much. We are going to go into recess at this moment, and we will be back at 1:30 for several public hearings. So thank you very much, everyone. We will see you at 1:30. Thanks.
Issue for people. We've also added $4.5 million specifically related to improve safety along the Purple Line. And so that'll be for keeping in mind pedestrian and bicycle needs as that new project gets going. $4.2 million for sidewalk minor projects throughout the county. $2 million to add the Amherst Bikeway project in Wheaton, CB.